City Council meeting for March 7, 2023 is now in session. First on the agenda is Councilmember Dalla, who will lead us with the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Please rise.
Good evening, everybody. Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us the opportunity to gather here tonight. Thank you for protecting us as we traveled here and providing us an opportunity to meet, learn, and grow. As we begin our meeting, we dedicate this time to you. We pray for the citizens and staff members who have made this meeting possible. We also pray for those that volunteer to protect us in this community. Provide us with the guidance and wisdom to make the decisions that are best for our community, and protect us with your embrace as we return to our homes later this evening. Your word says in Colossians 3:17, "And whatever you do, whether in word or in deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him." Thank you for blessing our time together. Help us make new connections and gain the wisdom to do the work you've set before us. We give you honor and glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Did you get those notations I emailed?
Yes, but they do all the introductions, so I don't have to read them. Okay, so it's you. Okay. Okay. Before we get started, as a reminder, students who are participating in the Hall Baldwin Scholarship are required to sign in on the sheet located in the back. If you have any questions or additional details, you could email Ms. Gonzalez at sgonzalez@schertz.com. That's SGONZALEZ@schertz.com. All right, so we'll move on. We'll move forward with a proclamation. If I can please have the representatives for the 311, please come up here to the podium. The City of Schertz Proclamation, National 311 Day, March 11th, 2023. Whereas 311 call centers provide citizens with a single point of contact for non-emergency services that can be reported in person, electronically, or by any other means of communication. Whereas in 1996, Baltimore, Maryland adopted the first 311 system as a way to ease pressure on the overburdened 911 system. The new system freed up emergency phone lines and shortened wait times for emergency calls, helping 911 dispatchers get emergency services to folks that need them more quickly, ultimately saving lives. Whereas 311 system also invites the citizens to be the eyes and ears of the city, while more closely connecting the public sector to its citizens. Whereas the City of Schertz has 311 customer relations representatives who have combined a total of over 20 years of experience. Now, therefore, I, Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor for the City of Schertz, Texas, do hereby recognize and proclaim March 11, 2023 as National 311 Day. I also encourage all the residents of the City of Schertz to recognize and honor the commitment and dedication and hard work our 311 staff provides the citizens of this great city. Thank you all. Please.
I just want to say thank you to our ladies of 311, Sherry Davis, Lupe Martinez, and Lydia Martinez. 311 is definitely a critical part of our customer service here at the city, and they're often the very first voice that you hear when calling, and they can assist residents with all kinds of issues, concerns, ask questions, and our ladies are very knowledgeable and helpful in all that they come across and can help y'all with. So just want to say thank you to them.
Now, our 311 staff is very vital to the operations of our city. If they don't know the answer, they'll know how to get the answer. So please, I encourage you, if you have any comments or questions or issues that surface, that's the number to call, 311. All right, we'll move forward to employee introductions. We'll start off with Police Department. Okay. Police and Police Communications. No, she didn't tell me, but I thought it was the same.
Good. Good to go. Good evening, everybody. Today, I am introducing Abigail Ibarra. She started with the Schertz Communication Division on December 5th, 2022. This is her first position as an emergency dispatcher. She was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, and graduated from Early College High School as a Texas Scholar. Her hobbies include cake decorating, Netflix, and playing video games. She is looking forward to becoming an asset to the city of Schertz and giving back to our community.
Hello, my name is Abigail Ibarra, and I would like to thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to serve as a 911 dispatcher and as well as giving back to my community.
Welcome to our team. Next, we have Neighborhood Services.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'd like to introduce David Garcia, our newest code enforcement officer. He comes to us from the city of San Antonio, where he retired after 20 years of service, so he's a long public service career, with 13 of those directly as a code enforcement officer. He loves Las Vegas, DIYing his home, upgrading his vehicles, and he wanted to make sure everybody knew he's a Chevy guy. David.
Hello, good evening. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to become a part of the City of Schertz team. I look forward to serving the best of my abilities.
Welcome to our team. Next, we have GIS.
Hey, good evening, council members. It's my pleasure to introduce our newest GIS specialist, Alexa Venecia Dassey. Originally from New York, we had a lot of applications. We actually found her in St. Joseph, Michigan, teaching school, and she blew us away on her interview. We convinced her with the promise of mild winters and lots of outdoor activities to move down here with us and work with us. But let me hand the mic over to
Hello, City Council. I just want to say I am super excited to be here. Like Tony said, promising the mild winters. I wanted to get away from the snow, and Schertz is offering me that, except for the ice storm that I walked into when I moved down here. So I just want to say thank you, and I am so excited to put Schertz on the map for you.
Welcome, welcome. Next, we have water and wastewater.
Gotta work for your pay.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Today, I'd like to take some time to introduce y'all to two of our new service worker ones in the Water Wastewater Department. First, I would like to start out with Keith Wiggins here. He's been with the city for a little while now, and he's really shown to be a hardworking individual and a great asset to the team. In his spare time, he enjoys fishing and spending time with his dog, Sebastian. Also, we have Miguel Sandoval. He comes to us with a lot of knowledge and understanding of pipes and how things work. He enjoys powerlifting and being outdoors in his time off. Thank y'all. Would y'all like to say anything?
Gentlemen, mic's yours. I love the shirt, by the way.
Oh, thanks. My name is Keith, by the way, and I love to be with the company.
Welcome to our team.
Nice to meet you guys. I look forward to working here. Thanks.
Welcome, guys. Next, we have planning. Not here. Okay, we'll move on to fire.
I brought a whole football team with me tonight. All right. So as you can see, I got 7 folks. I asked each of them a quick 8 questions, and here's how they responded. I'm going to start with Jacob Amerson, who's right here next to me. Jacob Amerson was born in Lavernia, Texas. He still lives there to this day. His father was a Bexar County sheriff for 36 years, and his mother is a family nurse practitioner that specializes in hemophilia. He's raised with his older brothers, Carl and Steve, and his sisters, Megan and Becky. If he had to eat one meal every day for the rest of his life, it'd be quesadillas. His biggest irrational phobia is wet socks. And if aliens landed on Earth today and offered to abduct him, he said he would go with them, in fact. And if he could only pick one famous person, dead or alive, to be by his side during a zombie apocalypse, it would be Theodore Roosevelt. And the game show that he would most like to be on is Family Feud. So, Jacob.
I appreciate the opportunity to join the community, and thank you for the job.
Welcome, Jacob.
Next, I got Mr. Joe Hernandez. Joe is a native of San Antonio, Texas, born and raised. He actually comes to us from Castle Hills Fire Department, where he spent 21 years over there. He's married for 2 years to his wife, Nicole, has a 13-month-old son, Elijah Joe. If he had to eat one meal for the rest of his life, it'd be salmon and sweet potatoes. Biggest irrational phobia is snakes. I don't know if that's that irrational. If aliens landed, he said, yes, I would go with them as long as I got to take my family. His famous person with him in a zombie apocalypse would be Denzel Washington, and his favorite game show would be Press Your Luck. Joe?
Hi, good to meet you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome, welcome.
Up next, I have Tori Howard. She is from Ocean Springs, Mississippi, currently resides in San Marcos, Texas. This is one of the ones that I brought with me from my last department. She was a good find. So she has 2 dachshunds, right? Is that how you say that? Dachshunds, Joe and Javi, and they're currently staying with their parents in Mississippi while she gets adjusted to her new job. The meal for the rest of her life would be chicken, rice, and broccoli. And her irrational phobia is that she didn't actually put her car in park and woke up to her car across the parking lot. She would not go with the aliens because she has not accrued enough vacation time. Her celebrity would be Chris Pratt, And the game show she'd like to be on is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Good evening, City Council. I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you.
All right, up next we have James Richards. He was born in California and grew up around San Antonio. He's married to his wife, Fabiola. Did I say that right? Fabiola Richards. No kids. The one meal he liked to eat is huevos rancheros. Biggest irrational phobia? Not really sure. What kind of answer is that, man? If aliens landed on Earth, he said he would probably not go with them. And his celebrity during an apocalypse would be Keanu Reeves. And if he could appear on any game show, it'd be Price is Right. Mr. Richards?
Nice to meet you, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity and look forward to serving the community.
Well, welcome to our team.
All right, up next we have Mr. Chris Tippett. He is from Geronimo, Texas, right up the road here. His spouse is Sarah. He's got a stepdaughter, Kylie, a stepson, Cameron, a son, Ashton, a daughter, Carly, a son, Case, and a stepson, Leo. Did I get everybody? Yeah. Okay, very good. If he had to choose one meal for the rest of his life, it would just be breakfast, because you can't go wrong. He believes that most phobias are pretty rational, but his is that if he were to have some flatulence while he was in the gym and had his headphones on. With the aliens, he would go with them if he could excel in the fire science technology realm or other items of technology. Keanu Reeves, without a doubt, would be his celebrity, and the game show that he'd like to be on is Family Feud with Steve Harvey.
Nice to meet you, City Council. Looking forward to this opportunity to grow with the city, this great community, in many years. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Next up is Ethan Schneider. He was raised in Schertz, Texas, so a local boy. Comes from a large family with 6 siblings. He would eat hamburgers every meal for the rest of his life. Fear of snakes, got another one, once again, not irrational. And he would not want to be abducted by aliens, another Keanu Reeves fan, and he would also go on Family Feud.
Thank you, City Council, and I just want to say I look forward to serving this community and working for this great department. Thank you.
Welcome.
Last but certainly not least is Jamel Owens. He comes to us from Memphis, Tennessee, where he spent a couple years working for Memphis Fire Department, so he's bringing some experience down to us as well. His spouse is Paris, is that right? Paris Owens. He's got 3 kids, Casey, Kaya, and Caden. Fried turkey with dressing and cranberry sauce with chitterlings would be his meal for the rest of his life. His, once again, not so irrational, flying cockroaches would be his phobia. He would go with the aliens if he was able to fly the ship. And then Lenny James from The Walking Dead would be the celebrity he'd like to be with, and Family Feud would also be the game show that he'd like to go on to. Jamel?
Nice to meet you, City Council. Happy to serve.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Welcome to our team.
Thanks, City Council.
Welcome. We'll move on to announcements of upcoming events. There's no announcements. No. Well, okay. Then we have announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Mr. Williams.
No announcements this evening, Mayor.
Okay. Announcements and recognitions by the mayor. There's a couple of announcements. First, we have Operation Comfort for Wounded Warriors, a 5K. That is this Saturday over at the Blue Bonnet Palace. I hope to see some of our community out there supporting our veterans. Also, this past weekend, we had Kick Cancer 5K. And one of our participants just kept running because he forgot his medal. Mr. Dalla. Congratulations, Mr. Dalla. Third place, yes, third place in his age group. But that was, Kick Cancer, actually, the number of participants was overwhelming. The year before, we had about 220, and this past Saturday, there were over 600 participants. And I just want to express my gratitude for the community, for their participation in trying to find a cure for cancer. So we'll move on to the hearing of residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the City Council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the council, for the record, Please state your name and address. Mayor Pro Tem, please call our first speaker.
Reed Carr, please.
Good evening. I'm pleased to be here. I'm also sad to be here because I'm speaking in opposition of your ordinance 23S02.
May I please have your name and address, please?
Sorry, you already announced my name is Reed Carr. I live at 3509 Columbia Drive in Northcliff.
Thank you, sir.
So now you know why I'm opposed to 23S02. I want to say that the extra revenue from crowding in so many people into so small a space won't be worth all the problems they will bring. I ask you to table this proposal. It doesn't justify negating the rules that are already in place. I noticed this city was incorporated in 1958. At that time, I'd already been a naval aviator for over a year, so I'm old, and I don't want to have to change my ways. Thank you for hearing me out.
Next up is Tom Wilson.
Hello, my name is Tom Wilson. I live at 3805 Overlook Drive in Scenic Hills. There's a lot to be said and discussed about the development in this land that once was the golf course. There have been a couple of comments to make that need to be made in front of the committee here. Our HOA president stated in the last meeting that Scenic Hills supports this project. That statement wasn't exactly correct because not everyone was given the opportunity to understand what this agreement or this discussion was about. And we didn't have a chance, some of us did not have a chance to address the committee, or I'll even say even vote on it. I wanted to take the time to express opinion or a position on the proposals. I think the statement that was made by him was very premature, and it was my opinion, and we table this now so we receive more answers to our questions and better an explanation of how all the golf course developments impact the entire community and not just Scenic Hills. As another individual stated in a previous meeting, this is not just 4 neighborhoods with this development going in and 3 more developments or 4 more developments in the area. But this impacts the entire community. We are all intertwined. We're going to be in and out of the different communities. Everything that is done is going to impact us all. So I know not everyone's going to be happy with the results of this. And we all should be able to talk about it, come up with something that I think everyone can agree to and live with. But I just felt uncomfortable without something being said that not everyone had an opportunity to share with this decision that Scenic Hills supported this development. So with that, I thank you, and that's all I got to say.
Next up, Carol Davis.
My name is Carol Davis. I live at 3337 Wimbledon Drive. I am a citizen of Schertz. We are citizens of Schertz. If you are a citizen of Schertz and active duty or retired U.S. military, please stand. If you are a small business owner and a resident of Schertz, please stand. If you are a parent, grandparent, or student in the city of Schertz, please stand. If you are a citizen of Schertz that simply wakes up every day to work hard for the home you have made and have earned, please stand. Please remain standing because this body of council members and mayor need to see the people that you, this council, using the correct political language of the day, have accused us of racism. You, the council, need to see the people that you have said are not intelligent enough to understand what is appropriate for their own neighborhoods. You, the council, need to see the citizens that are less important than tax dollars. You, this council, need to look the citizens in the eye and acknowledge that a contract was made with the developer behind the backs of the majority of the citizens of the Northcliffe Fairhaven area. You, the council, need to see the citizens that are not worthy of a police presence in their neighborhood. You, the council, need to look these citizens and know that they have spoken and have made it clear that we are not citizens of Seguin. And by the way, my family members were insulted by comments made last week. And we are not citizens of Cibolo, who I've been told we are waiting on that municipality to fix roads and open traffic nightmares. We are citizens of Schertz, and your job is to serve us. Stop putting the cart before the horse and fix the broken infrastructures before you add to the broken system and make it worse. The irony is that March 6th, yesterday, was the day the Alamo fell in 1836. Lieutenant Colonel William Barrett Travis penned a letter to the people of Texas and all Americans. I quote, "The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion otherwise. The garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. The tallest flag in the city of Schertz waves proudly at the entrance to Northcliffe. We stand tall to defend our neighborhood. You, now the city council, should stand and look these citizens of Schertz in the eye and see that we stand united in firm opposition to this PDD. Thank you."
Next is Janet Wilson.
Janet Wilson, 3805 Overlook Drive, Scenic Hills. And it's not easy for me to come here and speak, but it's also not easy to stand by while someone else supposedly speaks for me. I'm not in favor of anything the developer has proposed, and for all the good reasons that have been given here for months. I can't even comprehend so many buildings, streets, parking spaces, and people in such a small area. It seems to me that almost every square inch will be covered in concrete. I would like for all of the surrounding neighborhoods to be supportive of each other. That's it.
Next is Heather Jackson.
Good evening. My name is Heather Jackson. I live at 3410 Wimbledon Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council this evening. I think it's safe to say from previous council meetings that the residents from the Northcliffe area are a passionate group. We love our homes, our neighborhoods, and the land that surrounds them. These strong feelings are what bring me before the council this evening. After last week's meeting, I had a lot of questions about things moving forward. It has been mentioned several times about the option of a PID, a public improvement district. I had no idea what a PID was. None of us did. I remember looking at my husband in confusion over what in the world that is. I have spoken with Mr. James multiple times since last week's meeting, asking about a PID, what it entails, just trying to get a basic grasp of the concept. My husband and I sat and watched some YouTube videos from the state of Texas about PIDs so that we could understand them even more. In addition, my husband was able to meet with the broker of the land last week at the old clubhouse on Country Club Boulevard to ask him some questions about the availability of the land. Then, we met as a Northcliffe community to explain what we learned and what a PID is to our neighbors. We wanted to see how the neighborhoods as a whole feel about the idea. The feedback was a resounding yes, that we need to explore this to the full extent that we are able. We are coming before you this evening to let you know that we are in the beginning stages of forming a PID. We have a lot of people willing to help. We have a lot of people who are willing to help and who are very interested in this opportunity. We recognize that this is going to take a lot of time and effort. We are ready to work. We recognize that there is a lot we don't know about PIDs. We are ready to learn. We recognize that this is a process with a long road ahead. We are in it for the long haul. We love our neighborhood and we love Schertz. We are excited about the possibility of collaborating with the city to find a use for the old golf course land that everyone can enjoy. Northcliffe is pretty far removed from most of Schertz. This could be our opportunity to bridge that gap and for Northcliffe to bring something to the table for all of our great city. In a few minutes, you will see me and my husband slip out of this meeting. Please know that it is only because we get to go hear our son play at his UIL band concert. We wanted to be here tonight nonetheless to let the council know that while we are in the very beginning stages of this process, we are working and learning. We want to ask to be placed on a future city council agenda so that we can speak about this and begin the dialogue. In full transparency, I'm not sure what the best timeline for that is. What I do know is that we are a motivated group, ready to work, ready to improve our neighborhood, ready to come up with something that is appropriate and that truly does enhance our city. We are Northcliffe, and we are here to stay. Thank you.
Phil Jackson, please.
I didn't want to follow my wife. But at least I don't have my boys in front of me to get me too emotional, so that's good. So Phil Jackson, I'm at 3410 Wimbledon Drive. I didn't want to reiterate what she said, I just wanted to bring some things to the council's attention just in case there wasn't some knowledge on some of these issues. We know that the appropriateness is in question for us. We know that the density is a big issue out here in our area. What I want to speak to is a reminder, we have 5 out of the 6 HOAs, thousands of people that are not in favor of this. We have 1 HOA that is. Please know that 1 HOA made an agreement with the developer that they would support them as long as there is no path that goes through that land, and that land would be gifted to the HOA. So the gift of the land was part of the agreement. Last week, one of our members came up and spoke to a deal that we are learning about the new roof on the clubhouse. Our understanding is that roof is being given to them at the dealer's price, and that they are also being provided the labor to put that roof on their clubhouse, another part of this deal. Today, a resident released an email that was sent from their HOA president that confirmed that they are under a contractual obligation to the developer to support this build. I have some concerns about the ethicality of some of these things that have happened. Now, that being said, that HOA, clearly, some came up today that we didn't even know about that are opposed to this. There is some divisiveness inside there because not everybody was fully informed. The 5 HOAs that remain, we are getting organized clearly. We are coming together. We are speaking and talking about putting this PID together. We know it's a lot of work, but it's work we're willing to do. We went door to door to all of our neighbors that we could, because we can't get into the Scenic Hills neighborhood. It's a gated neighborhood. We went door to door to give everybody the opportunity to have a voice, to make their voice heard in this issue. Because we know that we have to get 20% of the land in order to have a supermajority on this council. We've been in contact with Mr. James. We have met that 20%. We are now at a supermajority. The people have spoken. We're asking that you listen. If the developer cannot come up with something that's appropriate for this land, They are able to sell their land just like I am able to sell my home. If it's not appropriate, please don't allow them to come in and put it in and hurt us in the process. Thank you.
DJ Thompson.
$3325 Charleston Lane, DJ Thompson. And I am so happy to be here, and it's been too long since I have been here. And Mayor Gutierrez, you were a council member last time I was here, and Mike Carpenter was my favorite mayor who was here. And Scagliola, you and I are getting together soon, okay? So, and then the new people, and Tim, I'm so sorry that I didn't remember. And then I recognize you too. Davis, right? Yes. Yes, it's been a long time. But I want to say, Gutierrez, you've kind of filled out a little bit. I guess we all have, huh? Okay, well, I'm the one who has the blue sheet. And if you'll just bear with me for a moment, I would like to read a scripture. It's Proverbs 21, verse 1. And it says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord." Now, I know that's a really big promotion, right, Mayor and City Council members? But that's what I equate to you all. The king's, you, my mayor, and you, my City Council members, I'm praying that the God would hold your heart in his hand. And please don't do this to our community. You're going to make Country Club Boulevard worse than 3009. And we're a little bitty community. We can't sustain that. I love you, Eugene. This is one of the developers. And you too, sir. I met you last time. You told me you had some hard issues. I've been praying for you. I've added you all to my list of prayers. I'm praying for all of you. I love you all. You're my neighbors first. And then we elected you to represent us. Why are you fighting against us? I just don't understand. I really don't. I just really want to weep. I'm really so nervous. I never get nervous speaking, but I am just so emotional. I love you all, and you're turning against us. Why are we fighting? I don't understand. Why are you fighting me? Gutierrez, Mayor Gutierrez, why? I don't understand. I love you. If you came to me and said they're trying to do something in my community I don't want, I'm like, where do I sign? What can I donate? How can I support you? And I want you to be the mayor that Mike Carpenter was. He hand-guided you to this position, right? Didn't he nominate you for this position? He was always there for us. Mike was a great mayor. I want you to be the same great mayor, please. Please, I have nothing against, I like this developer. I've forgotten your name, sir. What's your name? Okay, the attorney. Well, you were at the zoning meeting, right? Yes. And I got to speak with you. And I hope I was very loving and kind to you. I have nothing against you all. I want you to bring those townhomes, just not to Country Club Boulevard. Please, we can't sustain it. We can't. You know, Mr. Scagliola, our little bitty town can't do that. And Mr. Davis, I think you're voting with us. And if we can, if the Lord, I'm praying that the Lord would touch your hearts and turn. I have 3 more minutes for my husband, by the way, if my 3 minutes are almost up. And I just want you all to know that I love you. We all love you. We want to support you. We want you all to, we are, did you see this blue paper? Let's go over this for a minute. We are praying and nothing is impossible for us, right, team? Yoo-hoo, yes! And we're praying for you all. We want us to come together. We want you, Mayor, leading us. I was looking at the role of the mayor. And it says the mayor is to lead the community and supporting the community. I feel like, I know you were a realtor. I don't know if you still are a realtor.
No, never was.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. That was bad news. I'm so sorry. But support us, please. We want to support you. We want you to not win by low numbers. We want you to win by great numbers. And we have the votes to do that. And we want to vote for all of you all. But we don't want to vote for someone who's attacking us. We live here and pay taxes. They're just coming through for a year or two. They'll be gone. Please, we're willing to pay. We have a PID in place now. We have money for the city. Please, support. How can you not support us? Okay, real quickly, I'm going to go over these. Number two, I'm happy to greet each of you all. I really love you all, and I would love to take you all out to dinner, if my husband doesn't mind. He's got to fund everything. Also, I want everybody from our area, North Cliff and surrounding areas, one more time, stand up, and then give yourselves a great big hand of applause. Woo! Yeah! And then number four, we have a very intelligent plan. It's a PID we have now. I meant to start out saying, please forgive us for what we didn't do yesterday. And please, Mayor, don't think that we're stuck in the past. We're looking to the future. We've got great plans for our area, and we want you to come and be a part of it. We love you. Love us back. Don't be the enemy. Please, be our mayor. We're part of you. We pay our taxes. We're here to support you. Please don't let us down. Lead the rest of this group in supporting us. They shouldn't be leading you. You should be leading them in supporting us. And I will make you a very special treat. Once a month for the rest of this year. I'm just asking you to do what number 10 says, because I know I took a lot of time. And we have a date, so we have to leave right after I get done. It's at 7 o'clock, so please excuse us. But number 10, you know that this is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Please stand with your people, city council and mayor, please. Don't leave us waving in the fan, in the wind, because you're gonna choose against us for developers and not for us. Please don't do this to us. We were in a state of shock yesterday. Please forgive us for everything we did yesterday, and we forgive you all for everything you did yesterday. Let's start afresh, anew today, and let's walk together, this road together, and be the community that God wants us to be, and let's love each other well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bill Edmonds. Bill Edmonds.
I've been here before. Bill Edmonds, 4909 Crestwood Drive, and as you all know, I am the president of the North Cliff HOA. I guess my reputation at this last meeting was kind of besmirched, where I was basically called a liar that our HOA went along with what they wanted to do on the Scenic Hills 55. At no time did myself or anybody on our HOA board say that, yes, we were with you. We didn't say we weren't with you, so I guess they took that as a tacit approval that we were with them on putting this through. So I just want to make the point clear, in case anybody's thought about it, we are not with them. And if you allow this, you're taking, what's the last vote you had? I think it was 28 people that were for this, that turned their paperwork in. Whatever that small number is that's coming out of Scenic Hills 55 only is affecting 5 HOAs and over 1,000 homes and close to 2,000 people by the 15, 20, or 40 votes that you have coming out of this. I understand that's what your charter says, you have to go only by the land use area and the 20% rule. I just want to point out a couple things. Your core values, I gave each of you an email that you should have got. It's probably still sitting in your inbox. You didn't get it, but if not. The first thing is, it says, treat others the way you'd want to be treated. I'm not going to say you're not treating us good. You know, you're doing what you think is right. So I'm not going to say you're treating us bad. So if that's how you think we should be treated. Next one is do the right thing. There's a time and a place for everything. This might be the right time for Schertz to do this. However, it's not the right location to put all of this townhomes, 180 units, sandwiched in between nothing but single-family homes. Third one is, do the best you can. I know you're all doing that. You're all doing the best you can, or you wouldn't be sitting up here. The last one is work cooperatively as a team. We're part of your team. We elected you. We're one big team in this city. All of us. That includes you up there. You got a large portion of your team that is against this. A large portion. Excuse me, under your building code for townhome districts, says the district should not be located in areas where it would increase traffic through single-family neighborhoods and should be adjacent to arterial streets with sufficient capacity to carry the increased traffic generated. You're going to take 180 townhomes and put them out to 2 streets going through the North Cliff HOA area to get to 1103. One last thing, purpose and intent is to lessen congestion on the streets, provide convenient, safe, efficient circulation for vehicular and pedestrian traffic HOA area if they want to go south on 35.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Charles Boyle.
Good evening. I'm Charles Boyle. I live at 3333 Wimbledon Drive. I moved in there in October of '93. I lived on Robert Stevenson for the first 5 years I was here, but my wife had a problem hearing all the trains all night long. She'd tell me another one, another one. So we went to our real estate agent and said, where can we go? We like Schertz. I work at the base. I'm a retired GI. I get my medical there. She gets her medical. So we liked it. So we moved up there. She said, I know just the place. And that's where we ended up. And you're going to take all that away from us, every bit of it, because those people are going to be young, they're going to be vibrant, they're going to make noise, they're going to drive past everything, and they won't care because they're transients. And then they'll just get up, move out, buy them a home somewhere and move out, and somebody else will take their place. 900 vehicles? Who knows how many people those apartments will hold? And then we'll be left with it, and we won't like it, but there's nothing we can do about it if you vote it in. So please, take us into consideration, those people that moved up there, for what we thought we were getting, a nice, quiet place to live. Thank you.
Richard Moss.
Before 34 Wimbledon Drive. And I'm going to talk about a few other things at the same time as talking about Northcliffe. And basically also on today's, I should have 6 minutes, Mayor.
Yes.
Okay. Some of the other things that are on the agenda today, and that is changing ordinance 23-S-07. And I think this actually ties into the whole townhome thing. Because in the first article, 21-10-3, it talks about size of parking. And it talks about reducing the size of parking. And I don't know, surface parking, I don't know if that has to do with this whole townhouse thing or not. But I'm definitely against this, especially considering the size of vehicles around are getting bigger, not smaller. So it makes no sense to reduce the size of surface parking. I mean, that just makes no sense at all. And then we go down to community benefit. Is the city's desire to promote safe, orderly, efficient development and ensure compliance with the city's vision of future growth. Well, future growth is bigger vehicles and more vehicles. The idea of going to smaller parking spots makes absolutely no sense. And there's currently no public transportation anyplace, so how in the world are you supposed to get anyplace if you don't have a car? And then goes down to the next one, which is probably the most important one, which is section 21-10-4. And it talks about reducing the number of units of parking that are required for different developments. And of course, it hits on a 3-bedroom apartment, or a 3-bedroom house will now only have to have 1.7 parking spots. Again, it's totally ridiculous that you would do that. We already know in the chart that I've provided with you, the number of people in a house goes, a 3-bedroom house will have 4 people. That's a federal standard. If you go to how many occupants, how many vehicles for 4 people, it's 2.5. So the idea of going to 1.7 makes absolutely no sense at all. And then the next one is, when I talk to city staff, I've been going on this for 6 months now, and I've talked to plenty of staff members, plenty of them. And when you ask them why anything is done, the most common statement, it's not an answer to whatever you say, the statement is, I think it did not rise to the level with staff on this project to cause a denial. It doesn't say we're recommending anything. Nobody will tell me anything that's been recommended ever. They will tell me why they could think about a denial. And in the future, I would think it will only make sense that they are willing to tell the council why something is recommended. The idea, if you're only going to come up here and say, if you're only going to tell people that it met a minimum standard, then use that. Fine, put it on the piece of paper that says, I only wanted to meet a minimum standard. But then people take recommendation, the word recommendation, and they look at that as meaning something meaningful when that's not what I've heard or seen. I've been waiting for people to tell me why for 6 months, and I don't get that response. And another thing I've talked about at different meetings before is the plain language initiative. And plain language is communication your audience can understand the first time they read it or hear it. The purpose of this is to improve customer service and reduce cost. This is the plain language initiative. It's there. You have the link to it, and it's a .gov. It's put out by the government to help people when they write proposals and do things in plain language. And then we go to my next thing is the current UDC uses the word should 40 times. That word is never defined anyplace. So in common language terms, none of us know what any of this means. And when they talked about providing traffic through or doing all these things from a district, it is crazy because you can stand there or sit there or whatever you want to do and tell me it's a PDD, meaning I can do whatever I want. And then even though they have a base on it that says it's a townhome base and it has the word shall, that's not complied with. So why would you put the base of being a townhome when you are not even going to comply with that? That makes absolutely no sense. In conclusion, in regards to ordinance 23-S-07, I would ask that you remove the change to UDC Article 10, Section 21-10-3, size of space. Reducing standard off-street parking space size. That's what the ordinance is. If you're going to change it in any way, you should make it bigger to actually accommodate the vehicles that are in service today. The number of pickups is the majority of vehicles in service. as I said, there's only 33% of the vehicles that are being sold today that are cars. Everything else is an SUV, a pickup, or else a minivan. So provide parking for those. Don't provide this little 18-foot that nobody can fit in. And then I would ask you to remove the change of UDC Article 10, Section 21.10.4, Schedule of Off-Street Parking Requirements, or to increase the parking requirements. And the major reason for not changing it for the PUD is three-bedroom homes. If you have a bunch of three-bedroom homes, they do not meet the 1.7, and the current standard for, on average, is 1.88. So I don't know where you even got the 1.7 from. I mean, and it makes no sense to put that into a three-bedroom community when there's no place for any of these people to park. Goal, to amend the UDC to review and update the development regulations due to changing conditions and community goals in order to establish and maintain sound, stable, desirable. Thank you.
Next is Maureen Moss.
No, that was,
Oh, the
yes.
combined time.
Yes.
Amanda Laredo Reyes.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Laredo Reyes. I live at 3726 Columbia Drive. Here today in opposition of these townhomes that you guys are opting to literally put in my backyard. I say you guys because you are the city council. You're supposed to represent us, right? That's what you signed up to do. You know, we've got developers coming in and saying, oh, you know, it's about the tax dollars and, you know, it's going to improve our community. But I moved here 8 years ago. My wife and I came in from San Antonio. I was in the medical center. I heard sirens constantly. We moved out here for peace and quiet and a slower pace. We've been in this home for 8 years. We brought our first child home here. And so I have now transitioned from looking at swing sets to an almost 3-year-old, trying to figure out how we're going to be able to allow her to safely play outside. We live on Columbia. We have an increase of traffic already as it is. My kid is outside playing daily. If she plays in the backyard, she's going to have construction and all of these people coming in. If she plays in the front yard, I'm going to have to worry about her potentially getting hit by a vehicle. Worst case scenario for any parent, right? So as you know, elected officials, we count on you guys to be our voice. And it's frustrating to feel like tax dollars and a budget, you know, or a balance sheet are being put before the citizens. And we've heard from, you know, the older community, and they're motivated by what benefits them. But, you know, we started out united, and now we've somehow been divided. And it's frustrating because, you know, we talk about supporting our neighbors and what can we do to help you. And, I mean, are we going to get your thoughts and prayers if, you know, there are young families that have kids that play outside? Are they not allowed to be able to safely play outside anymore? You know, like, how do you explain that? I feel that if this was going in your backyard and you have kids, it would be a concern for you. And so it's one thing to hear from those that are retired and don't have that sort of, you know, responsibility, or they've passed that. But what about the families that are young and that have come here for peace and quiet? I don't need to be in the city for that. I came out here with the intent of starting a family, and I'd love to do that here. But if we're going to come to a point where it's not safe for me to raise a kid here, then we're out. And that's frustrating because we've let people that have zero involvement in our community come in and take it over. You know, it's a small town. We've seen growth. I'm not opposed to growth, but we're not doing it responsibly at this point. The infrastructure is not there. So I'm requesting that you guys reconsider this for the citizens. Thank you.
And finally, Mary Salvatierra.
I'm talking more than I ever have. 3422 Wimbledon. I walked the neighborhood, Columbia especially, because I knew what Scenic Hill did, and asked these people if they had this public notice. Not one person told me they had that letter. That I don't understand. Not one person didn't, once they knew it existed, didn't sign it. It is so unfair to Columbia and all that side on Fairhaven that did not know what this builder was doing. And that's just wrong. And I'm totally against this. Thank you.
That's all tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, minutes. Consideration or action regarding the approval of the following minutes from our regular meeting on February 28, 2023. Item number 2, appointment, reappointment for boards, commissions, committees. Accept the resignation of Sue Bosnot of Schertz Historical Preservation Committee, and the reappointment of the TERS board members, Michael Dollard, Mark Davis, Jill Whitaker, Mark McChesney, and Gary Inman and Bradford Pittinger. Item number 3, resolution number 23R21. Consideration or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the Schertz Seguin Local Government Corporation, SSLGC, budget amendment for the fiscal year 2022-2023 in the amount of $522,466 as a transfer to the Capital Layout Fund, $750,000 as a transfer to the Professional Service Fund, a total of $4,534,000 to the Coven Elmer Creek Pipeline Project, and $2 million as a transfer to the Capital Layout Fund and other matters in connection therewith. Mayor Pro Tem, please finish the rest of the consent agenda items.
Sure. Item number 4, Resolution 23R22, consideration and/or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing expenditures not to exceed $75,000 with M&S Engineering for additional design services for the renovation of Building 10 and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 5, Resolution 23R01, consideration and/or action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing agreements with ILF-NT owner, LP, for subdivision improvement agreements for Homestead Unit 9 and Unit 11, an amended roadway capital recovery offset agreement and reimbursement agreement for construction of public improvements. Item number 6, ordinance 23S01, consideration and/or action on a request to rezone approximately 12.5 acres of land from Planned Development District to Planned Development District, PDD, generally located 1,500 feet southwest of the intersection between Schertz Parkway and Maskey Road, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas, also known as Windy Meadows Subdivision Unit 4. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Council, do any of these need to be removed for separate action? Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 6?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Dalla and second by Mayor Pro Tem Brown. Any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right, we'll move on to discussion and action item. Item number 7, ordinance number 23S02, consideration or action on the request to rezone approximately 25 acres of land from pre-development district to planned development district located approximately 2,200 feet southeast of the intersection of Country Club Boulevard and IH-35 Access Road, also known as a portion of Comal County Property Identification Number 377261 and Guadalupe County Property Identification Number 63833, City of Schertz, Comal County, and Guadalupe County, Texas. And this is the final reading. Ms. Delgado?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is for ordinance 23S01, a 25-acre zone change from pre-development to planned development district. Emily Delgado, Planning Manager. So as a reminder, the subject property is outlined here in green. You can see Country Club in Columbia. And then just as another reminder, on January 13th, 117 public hearing notices were mailed to all property owners within 200 feet, which is identified by that red buffer on this map. And then on February 8th, the public hearing notice for the previous meeting was published in that San Antonio Express News. An update from the last meeting. So we have received additional responses. And I know the slide here does say as of 5 p.m., but I did receive some additional. So as the call of the meeting today, we've received 80 responses opposed to the request that are outside that 200-foot buffer, 54 that are opposed inside the 200-foot buffer, and 33 that are in favor, 1 neutral. As of 5 o'clock, we did receive 26.93% in opposition, which does trigger that 3/4 vote or the 6 out of 7 city council members to approve. Right before the meeting started, the applicant has requested that the item be tabled until the April 4th meeting. They would like some additional time to speak with the HOA and to make any potential revisions. Also, in conjunction with the request to table, they would like if the city council members could provide any feedback or comments that the city council members would like to see in any proposed changes prior to that meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. All right, the applicant has requested that we table this item until, I believe, April the 4th. I believe Councilmember Dollar wanted to speak first.
Just a couple comments. First, the discussion about the PID. I totally 100% support that idea. Anything that I can do as a council member to help you with that, I'll do that. One of the big hurdles that the PID has is that there's a $20,000 application fee when you have to start that process. As a council member, I'm willing to waive that fee to help remove that hurdle from you guys. Now, time is of the essence. There's a lot of challenges ahead. I certainly appreciate the applicant willing to continue to meet and discuss and hopefully find a resolution that everybody can live with. And I support his request to postpone until the April 4th meeting. And I hope that we can have some good and fair, honest discussions. But ultimately, it's going to be his decision whether or not he wants to proceed forward or not. And just another point of information for everybody to be aware of with the 20% supermajority rule that is in place now. There currently is a bill in the Texas legislature that is going through committee, which will up that requirement to 50%. So even with all the work that's been done over the last week, if that bill were in place today as law, that you would not have achieved the 50%, required a 50% majority. So time is of the essence. We need to find a solution that hopefully everybody can live with. So please don't take your foot off the gas, and let's see if we can find a way to make something work that is acceptable. And so that's all I have on comments.
Well, the applicant did make a request to table the issue. I'm not sure if Councilmember Dollar, was that a motion that you would?
If you want to call it a motion, I'll make it a motion.
I'll second.
Okay. A motion's been made by Councilmember Dollar to table the issue until April 4th, and second by Councilmember Scagliola. Council, any other comments? No comments. I do, before we take the vote, the applicant is reaching out. Many of you have indicated that that he didn't have an opportunity, you didn't have an opportunity to voice your concerns. This is the opportunity. I hope you take advantage of it so that you can address it. He can try to work with you before it comes back to council on April the 4th. Again, once again, a motion's been made. No other comments. Let's go ahead and call for the votes.
I have a couple of comments.
Yes.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of emails recently, and some people were concerned that I don't respond to emails. And you're absolutely right, I don't respond to emails. I much prefer phone calls. The reason I don't respond to emails is because there's this thing called an open records request.
Anybody can file one, and I would be required to turn over any information along the lines of their request, and I don't think I can protect your privacy if I did that. Here's the deal. I'm always available, well, most of the time. My home phone number is printed in the Schertz Tales. I answer my phone. I've got a little, it's an answering machine, so sometimes it keeps away the riffraff, but residents aren't usually riffraff. I'll pick up the phone and answer it. I will talk to you. I don't talk on my phone here. It's my home phone. Give me a call anytime. Now, I really do appreciate the developer reaching out to Scenic Hills. I want to thank the president of Scenic Hills even. Greg, I was an HOA president for a while. Thankless job. No good deed ever goes unpunished. I know that for a fact. I do not fault you for doing what you believe is in the best interest of your community. I agree with the concerns that were raised by the residents in Scenic Hills. And the thing is, I think there's a win-win solution in here. You know, walking trail and security are not mutually exclusive. We can have both. And that's something I'd like to push for. You want to sit down with me, other council members, I'll give you my feedback. But I'm not going to do it over the phone because I want it to be open, honest, and transparent, okay? That's the key. We can, I hope the city would be willing to coordinate an actual sit-down between us. I'm realistic. I know eventually the area is going to get developed. But I've always been a proponent of smart development, smart planning. And I am so thoroughly impressed with the efforts of some of the residents that went out. And, well, a PID is a hurdle. It really is. I never thought anybody would get the ball rolling on that. And I appreciate Councilmember Dalla's insights on that. Hey, I'm there for you also. I don't know what I can do. It is quite a challenge. But thank you for stepping up to the plate, running with the ball, all the other sports metaphors I could come up with. Thank you. You got to know I'm there for you. That's all I have, sir.
Once again, those of you that are attending and those of you that will be viewing this council meeting, note your calendars. April 4th is when we bring this back to the council. All right. And we will make sure it is on the agenda with a just table till April the 4th so that they're aware of the situation. Okay? All right. Motion's been made. Councilmember Hayward, any comments?
No, not at this time.
We have to vote on the postponement. Yes, yes. We are voting for the postponement of the ordinance number 23S02. Motion's been made, and let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 7 ayes, no objection. This ordinance 23S02 has been tabled until April the 4th. All right, we'll move on. Yes. Yes, we're going to go straight to the workshop. I know we have some guests here concerning item number 10, the presentation and discussion regarding the Schertz family YMCA. We'll move that up so that we can go ahead and discuss that one.
City Manager Williams.
I have the pleasure tonight to introduce the CEO of the Greater San Antonio YMCA, Luis Lopez, and I believe Ms. Veronica, right over here, will be presenting today about the YMCA and their operations.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and residents of Schertz. Again, my name is Luis Lopez, and I am the president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater San Antonio. And with me this evening is our Chief Experience Officer, Veronica Wong-Rizzo. I'd like to start by just thanking you for the opportunity to share and highlight our partnership that started so long ago, where we all decided to help and try to improve the residents and the lives of our residents through valuable programs and services that promote health and wellness, provide quality and safe childcare, provide much-needed senior services, life-saving swim lessons, community events, and other recreational activities. And is there something to turn slides here, or how do I? Sorry about that. Thank you. Down. How about, there we go. Thank you. So this is your Schertz leadership team. There's a couple in the audience today, but this is a group that works very hard with our community, but also with many of our city staff to ensure that the quality programs that we provide to our community are ones that are needed, but also ones that we know are right for our community. This beautiful picture and illustration of your Schertz Family YMCA, I want to start by just talking a little bit about some history and how this all started. Back in the mid-2000s, there was an idea with former councilmen and councilwomen at that time and the mayor, and talking about how can there be a community center for our Schertz residents and for the community of Schertz, which then reached out to the YMCA of Greater San Antonio, and a delegation of both parties went and visited the Houston YMCA to think of what could be here in our Schertz YMCA, in our Schertz community. After that, coming back, the YMCA and Schertz decided to to actually conduct a feasibility study that the YMCA led and funded, which came back to show that favorable for this community, and also the potential programs and impact that a YMCA could have. And a little bit of our mission and history is posted, and I'm not going to read through all of these, but I did want to just share, in the Did You Know, we opened in March of 2010 with 696 units. So a unit could be one person, two people, or a family. By the end of that year, we were at 1,551. At the end of 2022, we were at 4,278 units, and nearly 20,000 people had been served through programs and the impact of the YMCA. The other thing that I just want to call out is we've been working together for much longer than 2010. We started after-school programs in Schertz in 1990, 33 years of servicing our kids and providing safe and quality programs. And we also started overseeing and managing city pools in 2009. Want to just move into some of our areas of impact. And again, I won't read through every slide, but I certainly want to just identify in our area of youth, we're serving 500 kids every day in our after-school sites in 11 different sites. 250 kids come to our summer programs every summer. Teen programs is what we've been called to do, and really know that there is a gap in teen programs, but also for the Y to be able to fill those. We did a program last summer that had 25 teens. However, we have many more coming in, working out in teen memberships, and many from our high school right across the street. And 11,000 swim lessons were provided. 11,000 lives were saved because we're helping kids make sure that they know water safety and swim. Our Group X classes, many of us are familiar with what we offer at our Y, but what we're really proud about here is we just started offering evidence-based health and wellness programs, diabetes prevention programs, and all of those are funded by the YMCA and at no cost to any of our residents here or anyone that attends, to ensure that there's no barriers and that we continue to help impact the wellness of our community. As we think about giving back, this is where, in my opinion, the true collective impact model happens, where we bring partners. This is some that are listed here, highlighted, to really impact our community, but come together to say, how do we fund programs that are needed? How do we continue to ensure that nobody is ever turned away in any programs that we offered? And there's a nice picture there of Freddie, who's a Schertz resident, and many of y'all, I'm sure, know for many, many years. And here's just a cool update on some numbers that we've had since the beginning of our YMCA here in Schertz in 2010. We have provided over $1.5 million in financial assistance and subsidies. Over 1,000 kids annually participate in youth sports. 250 kids are in a summer day camp. Nearly 20,000 individuals participate in health and wellness programs, which is about a 40% penetration rate, which is industry standards is phenomenal. Typically, that's about a 10 to 15%. And this year, we were able to reinvest back in our facilities over $120,000. And want to give just a glimpse of a snapshot of who we serve. This is our association, YMCA Greater San Antonio, serving in over 4 counties, 12 different YMCAs, and as you see, many schools far out, as well as a ranch in Comfort, Texas. But more so, what is the value of our membership in all of the areas that we have? And the biggest value that we believe is what people receive as a member. Association-wide and nationwide membership, meaning that as a Y member, you can go to any YMCA across the country and know that you're going to be accepted as a member. Member pricing, financial assistance, virtual Y volunteer opportunities, but also access to nationwide programming are some of the membership benefits with the YMCA. And wanted to give you a snapshot of what our membership count looks like, Schertz residents versus non-residents. So our Schertz residents, and this is data just at the end of 2022, 60% of our total members are Schertz residents. And the other number there is about 1,700. Total is about that 4,300 total units, serving just under 12,500 at the end of 2022 in just health and wellness programs. And I wanted to highlight, the partnership that we truly value and what we can do in partnership with the city of Schertz. But as a YMCA, some of the benefits that we're able to bring and provide to our community is really the operational expertise to help us grow from that 500 number in 2010 to this number of serving nearly 20,000 people, and being able to provide specialists and functional experts in aquatics, and in health and wellness, and evidence-based programs, wellness programs, but also youth development. But really to be able to say we have resources across the nation, across the country, and within our own 12 YMCA association to help us ensure that as we provide programs, that they are the highest of quality, and that we can ensure that we're evaluating those, and if we need to pivot and improve those as needed, when needed. Our continued investment from both our Schertz community and the YMCA. The YMCA has pledged $2 million over the course of 20 years. There is a $100,000 membership fee reduction grant that the city gives to the YMCA to help create a lower rate for residents. And then there is also a operational grant that was started when the auditorium was created. However, this also reduces as our net surplus increases. So as that went to $399,000 in 2023, there was actually budgeted at $320,000 because of last year's surplus. So as we review that, that actually reduces as our surplus continues to increase from programs and services in the pool. And the next few slides are just some great slides from your community, your members, and these are from our senior center. Our Polar Plunge, which I know, Mayor, you've done that before. Our Dunkin' for Pumpkins, if anyone has had an opportunity to do that, that's a lot of fun. Trunk and Treat, our Moving on Main, where, again, a great example of what we can do through strong collaboration and partnership. Our extravaganza that is coming up soon. If you haven't already signed up, please do that. And then just a quick snapshot of what our members see us and think of us. We utilize a tool that is a real-time feedback tool called Listen 360, where members can give us feedback right away. And we create a score that's called an NPS, which is a Net Promoter Score, and we are currently at 75%, which is a top 10 percentile in the country against other fitness industries. And if you see here a couple of quotes that are directly from our members, I love the bottom one. Staff and members are very friendly and welcoming, but this is a snapshot of how our members see us, and you can see that in the result of just our continued growth. And this is a high level of where members see as the most important part of their why and their experience. The pool, staff, lessons, group fitness, courteous, and facilities, and all where we ensure that we keep specialists and where we keep a focus on as we review these annually. And then I will share here at a high-level dashboard our operational performance since the opening in 2010. Our contributor revenue has continued to go up. 2020 had a huge spike because as the pandemic hit, people who continued to pay their dues, we counted that as a contributed revenue for those supporting us. So that spiked up. Earned revenue, you can see the mix there from membership and program. Funding, the funding cycle is the pool operations, the senior center, the city pool management, and the fee reduction. You can see how those have fluctuated. And then our net surpluses from 2010, where there was a deficit on the first year, to how we've been able to grow the business through, again, our expertise and specialties, to 2022 with our net surplus there of right around $200,000. And this is a visits report, and the reason I wanted to show here is because that little triangle, that is 2023 January. 2023 January had more visits than we had in any other year, well, back to 2019, pre-pandemic, which the exciting part about that is our members in our community are coming. They're coming more as levels of the pre-pandemic haven't come back in many other organizations and industries. We are seeing people are coming, they're taking advantage of their YMCA, and we had the best January that we've had in many, many years, visits-wise. And sorry to run through that quickly, but I wanted to make sure I'm sensitive of your time, and then also make sure that I have time for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Okay, council, questions? Councilmember Dalla.
Just a quick comment. You know, I'm familiar with the NPS matrix and how that works, and that's a very impressive score.
Thank you.
And congratulations on that. We've been members for years and don't use it as often as we should. It kind of shows a little bit. But yeah, y'all do a pretty good job running the facility, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yes, Councilmember Scagliola.
I made a comment earlier how much I admired the work that the YMCA does. And yeah, I remember when I was a kid, we didn't have much money in the family. Mom and dad, 6 kids. Dad was out of work, work-related injury. And if it wasn't for the YMCA, you would have had 6 kids wandering the streets without a whole lot of things to do. The good thing about the YMCA is if you can't afford to pay, they'll find somebody who will share the cost, pay it for you. And it has always been an exceptional organization in my view. There's a couple of them out there. I won't name them because once I start naming them, I know I'm going to leave one out. But I'm an animal lover, let's put it that way. So there's a couple out there. There's a couple associated with the military. And then we have the YMCA. Might make good lyrics for a song someday. That's all I have, sir.
Thank
Right.
you.
Now, the YMCA they have been great partners in our community, And I think when I'm looking at the operation performance and I look at 2020 when we had the COVID, how many people left their memberships without exercising? I mean, because of everything that was going in. It shows a lot about our community, how important it is that you are part of our family here. Not only that, you provide quality of life and help our own Parks and Recreation department with some of the events and their co-sponsors on them. And I always thought fitness was the key to wellness. It's important that we I'm a runner, and that's the way I relieve some of my stress is by running out and running 5 or 6, maybe even 10 miles. And the childcare, it gives that family a sense of being able to just go out there, exercise, and their kids are taken care of while they exercise. Like I said, you guys are great partners. You're involved in our community, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you provide this community. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
All right, we have a public hearing. Item number 8, ordinance number 23S04. Conduct a public hearing in consideration or action on an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, to rezone approximately 87 acres of land from General Business District to Single Family Residential Agriculture District to General Business District 2, located approximately 4,000 feet west of the intersection of IH-10 Access Road and FM 1518, also known as Bexar County Property Identification Number 619249, also known as 12625 IH-10 East, City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas. First reading, Ms. Delgado.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is for Ordinance 23S04, 87-acre zone change from General Business and Single Family Residential Agricultural to General Business District 2. Emily Delgado, Planning Manager. So the subject property is outlined here in green. You can see IH-10, File Road to the left of the screen, and you can see that the property is currently undeveloped. On January 27th, 14 public hearing notices were mailed to property owners within 200 feet. At this time, we've received 2 responses, both of which were opposed to the request, and on February 15th, we did publish in the San Antonio Express News as well. So this is the zoning exhibit for the subject property, and you can see the split zoning. So the front 31.6 acres along IH-10 is currently zoned general business, and the remainder of the property, 54.9 acres, is the single-family residential agricultural, or RA. And then the other item that I'd like to note on this screen is you see that pink dashed line. That represents JBSA Randolph's Accident Potential Zone 2, or the APZ2, and it does incorporate that back portion of the property. So the comprehensive land use plan does identify the property as commercial campus, which is intended to accommodate lower intensity commercial, offices, flex office, and light industrial. The proposed General Business 2, or GB2, would allow those desired land uses per the comprehensive land use plan. So as I mentioned, the back portion of the property is within that APZ2. Per UDC Article 5, Section 2159A, if a property is within the ACUS or in the APZs, in order to submit an application for a zone change, they have to receive a written acknowledgement from Randolph Air Force Base prior to submitting the zone change to the City of Schertz. The applicant has submitted a letter from JBSA, specifically the Installation Encroachment Management Division from Randolph, which indicated that JBSA does not object with the proposed zone change request. They did inquire about the maximum height that would be allowed, any proposed developments, but ultimately they do not object to the proposed change to General Business 2 within the APZ. Since they did obtain that no objection from JBSA Randolph, they were able to submit for tonight's zone change application. So here's just a copy of that letter. So the subject property currently has 2 zonings, the back portion being that single-family residential agricultural, the front along IH-10 being general business district. The proposed zoning of GB2 for the entire property would eliminate that split zoning. It would make the zoning consistent for the entire property.
And then additionally, the GB2 is compatible with the comprehensive land use plan designation and desires for the property. So staff recommends approval of the requested zone change for the 87 acres to GB2 based on the compatibility with the comp plan, existing businesses in the area, and that JBSA Randolph does not object to the proposed zone change. On February 8th, the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission did meet, had a public hearing on this item, and recommended approval with a 5-2 vote. And the applicant is here and would like to make a presentation.
All right, wow. We can have the applicant provide the presentation.
Hi, good evening. Ashley Fairman, Killing Griffin and Fairman, 10101 Reunion Place, San Antonio, Texas. Nice to see you all this evening. Thank you for your time. Here tonight to talk about the rezoning. I'm here on behalf of W&B Service Company. I do want to introduce Tracy Maynor. He's the president and owner of W&B, and he's here and can give you a little bit of background on the company. Before that, W&B is a transport refrigeration company that specializes in transport refrigeration and semi-trailer truck dealership, and Tracy can give you all the good details on that. Site location, Emily did a great job of describing this property. It's 86 acres on the frontage road of I-10 on the southern side of Schertz. Only access is from I-10 frontage road. It's under construction now, but that's how it will remain in the future. Here's the current map that Emily showed with the split zoning. We are requesting GB2 on the entirety of the property. W&B will not be using the whole property, but we felt it was important to have consistent zoning throughout the site. Also, the single-family residential in the back, is not the most desirable use for the military, so we went ahead and changed it all, or requesting it all be changed to that GB2. Again, there's just the land use plan that we're consistent with. In the letter from JBSA. In addition to their non-opposition to the zoning request, there's also the maximum Florida area ratio that will be recommended, and they'll be looking at plans as we submit for construction on this site as well. So I'm going to let Tracy introduce himself quickly and talk a little bit about W&B, and then I'll make a few closing remarks on what we're asking for.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Tracy Maynor. I'm the president and CEO of W&B Service Company. Our company's been in business since 1952. I'm the third owner. It didn't come down through the family. I bought it from a friend of mine. I came to run it from him. We are in the transport refrigeration space, and we do semi-trailers. It works a lot like a car dealership, except for it's business to business. So our customer base are people that we do business with over and over and over again. Our primary role in the economy is to protect the nation's food supply and the pharmaceuticals that run up and down the highway. When you look at, Texas, I-10 and I-20, there's a significant portion of the freight that moves from east and west, food product that comes through this dirt. So it's really key to the nation's food supply. When you look at most of the produce comes, from the West Coast, and lots of the food product comes from Mexico. So this is a perfect spot for us to locate right here in Schertz. We are a company that promotes from within. Most of our executive team started as technicians or parts clerks or administrative staff and rose through the organization. And, we want to move to Schertz. We have an operation that's on I-35 in New Braunfels. It's called Superior Trailer Sales, and we have W&B Service Company that's in Converse. We want to move both of those facilities into one here in Schertz so that we can be more efficient, have a more modern facility, and continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And so I do want to point out, I think, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the two facilities right now have a combined 43 employees, and at the rate that they're growing and what they're hoping for the new facility is to grow that by about 20 employees at least over the next 5 years or so.
All right.
So, and then I just wanted to also point out, the site was selected obviously for the I-10 frontage and the easy on and off, and to keep the trucks on the highways as opposed to any sort of smaller road. And quickly, so this is a conceptual site plan. What you see there is the W&B facility, what it would look like once constructed, and as you see on there, it doesn't take up the whole facility. So Tracy is already, W&B is already the owner of this property, so they have the ability to be selective on who else comes into the property. They're looking for uses that are similar to theirs. This is just conceptual with potentially 2 other users shown on this site. The other thing that you can see on this exhibit is there is a major thoroughfare that runs through the site, or future major thoroughfare, so it's a 70-foot collector, I believe is what it's planned to be. And so we're not exactly sure if that's the precise location of the road, but that's generally where it's shown on the map. So there will be right-of-way dedication and eventually a road constructed through this property as well. And then just finally, this is the W&B facility in Duncanville. Just one street view and then another view of what it looks like now. And I think with that, I'll stop and can answer questions. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, this item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject? Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Okay, public hearing is closed. Council, questions? No questions. Yes, Councilmember Whitaker.
So you said you may not use the full parcel of land to develop on, so at this point, you plan on the back end just being vacant land or future development, or?
Right, so the plans right now, I mean, there are no plans at the moment, so right now it would remain vacant. I'm glad you asked, though, because I didn't point out on this plan, it's really hard to see, but you know, we did hear the opposition at P&Z from the 2 neighbors who returned their notices. And so what's shown on this plan is what we added was a 40-foot natural landscape buffer to the perimeter that's that's adjacent, if you can see, I'm not sure which one you're looking at. But on this map, 40-foot setback natural buffer in there to provide for that. And then we'll also have to, once and when development reaches that rear portion, the 8-foot masonry wall would also have to be built adjacent to the single family. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Councilmember Brown.
Well, we've been waiting for I-10 development to kick off in Schertz, and this looks like a good start to it right now. I like the fact that it's open. It's not overdeveloped for a small area like that, and nice buffers on there. So I think the business is perfect for the area. Although it's a busy business, it's a low impact at the end of the day. So very, very favorable. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Is there a motion to approve ordinance 23S04, 23S04?
So move. Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Brown, second by Councilmember Dalla. Any other comments?
Scagliola.
Scagliola, I'm
Dalla.
sorry. Scagliola and Brown.
Easy to mix this up.
Scagliola made the motion, Councilmember Dalla second. Any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to our next public hearing, ordinance number 23S07. Conduct a public hearing, consideration or action on an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, to amend Part 3 of the Schertz Code of Ordinances, the Unified Development Code, Article 5, Zoning Districts, subsections 21.5.2, 21.5.5, and 21.5.11, Article 9, Site Design Standards, subsection 21.9.7, and 21.9.10, Article 10, Parking Standards, subsection 21.10.2, 21.10.3, 21.10.4, 21.10.7.c, and 21.10.9, and Article 14, Transportation, subsection 21.14.3, first reading. Mr. James.
Are you sure you didn't miss a dot?
I
in that
don't think I
caption?
missed the dot.
Do you want to just read it again to make sure we got all the dots?
I did pause on commas.
Did
so-
you? Okay, all right, fair enough. So Brian James, Deputy City Manager for the City of Schertz. We're in a little bit of a different setup tonight, so I'm not sure our PowerPoint benefits us. But to walk you through kind of what we're doing and why we're doing, we have undertaken this effort to start updating the UDC that we haven't really done for quite a few years in a comprehensive way. And we're not necessarily working our way through the front. You may remember about 5-6 years ago, city staff updated the first few sections of the UDC. And what we're kind of doing is picking the areas that are most problematic for us. So two things that we're doing. One is we're coming back to the work of the City Council and Planning and Zoning Subcommittee on residential development standards and making some changes there. The other is some of the things that we have heard from development that staff finds to be problematic often in enforcement and creates some issues. And we've worked with the council subcommittee on that and taken those through P&Z as well to make some changes. So I'll talk you through the changes we're making with each of those sections a little bit. So first and foremost, in a couple of the different areas in the section on zoning districts, we are removing the references to the limitation on the R6 and R7 districts. Those are our two smallest zoning districts. And back in 2010, council decided to, basically felt we had too many small single-family detached lots coming in. They passed an ordinance to say council can no longer grant those. If you already had the zoning, it was out there, but we weren't going to grant any more of those kind of going forward. And I think certainly it made sense at the time why they did that, but as we'll talk about with some of these ordinance changes, what makes sense at one point in time, as things change, become different, don't necessarily make sense going forward. And so a couple of things that have happened. I think one thing that we've seen is with the cost of development going up, the cost of land going up, and then frankly hearing from some of our residents that, you know, I've got a bigger house with a big yard, and it's great because I had kids, they were in high school, but they've moved on, they've started their own families. I'd like to stay in Schertz, but I'd like to downsize. Without having that new zoning, we don't have as much ability for the small lots coming in. So the first sections are to eliminate those references to the prohibition on R6 and R7. But one of the things the committee wanted to do, though, is if we get straight zoning in, we don't necessarily want to get requests for huge areas of those smaller lots, the R6 and R7. And so the ordinance puts caps on those of the straight zoning, 30 and 40 acres to be zoned going forward. So again, we want to have that option. It makes sense in certain cases, but I think council fundamentally says we'd like not to just be all small lots. And so that's what the first section of changes does in the UDC. The next section has to do with the specific use permit. And so as you know, we require a specific use permit in certain zoning districts for certain uses. And so again, typically the zoning ordinance, it either permits or prohibits a use from being allowed in a zoning district. But there are some uses that I think in the wisdom of council in the past and folks said, it may be okay in some cases, but not others. So I don't necessarily want to prohibit it entirely because there are some cases it may be okay, but I also don't want to just let everybody do it because there are cases it may not be okay. And so the current ordinance with SUP, one of the things that it requires is a site plan to be included as part of that SUP application, and it attaches that site plan to the SUP ordinance. The challenge there is that a site plan is a very detailed document. Essentially, the applicant has to go out and fully design the site, spend all that money on engineering to lay everything out. And the problem is they don't know if they're going to be allowed to do it. So there's a huge upfront cost for them without knowing whether or not it'll be granted. Now, it can provide some protections, but the issue that staff looked at is when we've seen the SUPs that have come in over the last 3, 4, or 5 years, there really haven't been issues about particular layouts. It's been fundamental questions. So most commonly what you get are requests for a gas station with convenience store. And typically council looks at it and says, generally is this location appropriate for it? But they all kind of lay them out the same way. And so the impression staff has is the site plan adds very little value. And so one recommendation is to take out that requirement. Now, we got some good feedback from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they said, yeah, but there could be a case where that layout is important. where loading docks are relative to neighboring properties, things like that. So what we did is we put in a provision that allows the Planning and Zoning Commission, as a condition for approval, to require a site layout. So again, just to be clear, the Planning and Zoning Commission can impose recommendations or recommend conditions as part of their recommendations. So they could require additional buffering, they could require a higher fence, they could require more trees, a lower building height, things like that. And they can, with what we've added based on their feedback, a site layout. To be clear, it's not the full-blown site plan, doesn't have everything attached. It's a more basic layout that can get at those things that we think are important. So we feel like it more appropriately balances the need. The other thing we heard from after going to P&Z is there were some folks saying, we've got a provision that says if you don't pull a building permit within a year of the SUP being approved, it expires. And so a couple things where that's problematic. One is if we're not necessarily going to require the site plan to be attached and they haven't done all that work, they're going to come in, request the SUP. If it gets approved, then they'll sort of start that effort. So getting a building permit may be tight. The other is just what we've seen with the nature of things in the economy. And again, I think you've heard this from the folks at Quick Trip when they've come in. They've kind of come into the area. We're doing a whole bunch of stores throughout the San Antonio area. And it's sort of like, we got to get them in line. And at times, they're too busy to get to build in our store. At times, staff gets busy with stuff, and we have changes and it slows. So one of the questions was if we could get another year added, so 2 years to pull a building permit, the feeling is that really gives everybody a reasonable, fair amount of time to get it in. And what it doesn't do is have an open-ended SUP, that nothing happens and 10 years later somebody shows up and says, I got that SUP approved and I'm going to build that thing. And so we feel like going from 1 to 2 years is a reasonable change with the ordinance sort of going forward. And we think it'll be greatly appreciated. I'm going to jump to the parking requirements, and then I'll come back to sort of the landscape section because I'll hit sort of the least complicated first. But as some of the residents spoke to, we've got a few things we're doing with the parking standard. One is we at times have a problem with existing buildings that have been in the community for a while, before kind of the current version of the UDC came about in 2009, that want to expand. The problem is our development standards were different then. It may have been something that was here for, frankly, 50 years, and it becomes really problematic for them to sustain their business, to grow and keep up with the times, and necessarily meet all the requirements. And we have a provision that goes to this, but we wanted to make it more clear. So essentially what we said, if you've got a building or use that was established before February 24th, 2009, and that was the last real overhaul of the UDC, that if they want to come in and change that use or expand that building, and it triggers a requirement for more parking, that additional parking is only required at half the normal rate. And so what that does is that sort of accounts for some of those site constraints and things like that you may have. It's sort of the concept of what we did on Main Street by saying you can't take this house, convert it to an office and provide parking. We just sort of generally said do two and you're done. This we feel like applies to some of those older areas. But to be clear, if we have a new business that comes in, we'll take QT for example, their last store, and they say, hey, we want to add on to the building. They came in after that date, they would have to provide the additional parking requirement at the full rate. So we think this is good in that it provides clarity and surety to someone looking at the code. They know what to expect with it. But again, as we said at P&Z, you'll have different circumstances. We'll likely have a circumstance where this works fine. Everybody goes, wow, that was a great ordinance change. Look how well that's worked out. They were precluded from developing, and now they've been able to. But we will probably have some cases where because of this we go, yeah, that's a little bit tighter. But again, part of what we talk about is how much do we worry about every single scenario and create challenges and hurdles to folks going forward. And so we think this is sort of a good balance with it. The other thing that we've done, and this we've certainly heard from folks with, is we are recommending that we make a few modifications to some of the other things in the code, most primarily with, and this is what P&Z talked about, is the size of our parking spaces. We changed our parking spaces to create bigger parking spaces at 10 by 20. And I think a lot of people really like having those bigger parking spaces. You're right, if you've got a truck, it's nice. You know, if you don't have a truck but drive a car, it's still nice to have that extra room for the guy who drives the truck who's opening the doors. And so on the one hand, that makes a lot of sense. People like it. The problem is what we find with our regulations, and part of how we approach this is everything comes with a cost. And I think one of the things that we've seen is as development costs have increased dramatically, particularly in the last few years, that provision has become problematic. You've heard it from a number of folks coming in saying, our sites are really tight. We've got to get relief somewhere. We can't fit on the existing size lot. We can't necessarily meet all of the standards. And I will say there's nothing magic about it. It really, this becomes a community preference. How big do you want those parking spaces to be? But again, what you get is about a 20% increase from the 9 by 18 through the 10 by 20 parking space. It adds up, particularly when you think about a business that comes in and has a requirement for 200 or 300 parking spaces. So for instance, we think about ourselves and we think about going to H-E-B and what that feels like. But what this also means is maybe the business that you just saw come in with their 40 or 50 employees who come in and typically park in the morning, they work all day, they get in their vehicle and they leave, it requires them to have that bigger parking space size as well. So the cost for them to develop that site is more significant with it. So there's not a right or wrong answer. I appreciate the comments earlier. This is really a community standard of what we want to do. Now, we kicked around a few things about, well, we could require or allow a certain number of compact spaces or a certain number of spaces to be smaller and a certain number bigger. And one of the philosophical things we approach these code updates with is we wanted, interestingly enough, to simplify the code. One of the things that we'll talk about with landscape is for every provision we have in our code of ordinance, staff has to enforce that. So not only does the developer have to see that when they're developing their plans and know it's there, but staff's got to take the time and go through and review and find that and check that and then send back comments and change it. And so while there are some benefits to doing some things with a certain number of compact spaces, a certain number of big spaces, staff really kind of felt like that's just getting a little too tricky and it complicates the code again. I think our answer to the question of, well, I've got a big truck, you know, again would be, you often see folks with a bigger truck parking a little further out and they walk. You know, that's kind of the way it works. It doesn't necessarily require it. Again, a business has the ability. Well, no, again, at times people are going to cram that truck in no matter what the space size is. But businesses also have the ability to choose to create a bigger parking space. If we made this provision, or if we didn't, and some business said, you know, I really want to go 11 by 21, they have that right. It's a minimum parking space size. So I will say P&Z did not support this change. They felt like they like having the bigger parking spaces. They've not heard our residents come and say, man, you know, it'd really be nice if you shrunk the parking space size. But this is one that we hear from developers quite a bit, that it really has a significant hidden cost. Yeah, that's right. And so that's sort of the issue in terms of detention. So kind of beat that horse to death, I think, on that. The next thing that they did, or that we did in the code, is we eliminated the requirement for wheel stops. Right now, we have a requirement for wheel stops. Now, you're probably thinking, when I came over here and parked at the Civic Center, I don't recall seeing wheel stops. Well, we don't have wheel stops. And the Civic Center provision came after that. But there is a cost to those wheel stops. And so one of the things were, where are we putting these wheel stops necessarily if there's not a curb? Again, how much are we sort of getting into everybody's business a little too much, a little too deeply? What P&Z did say, though, is if you don't have wheel stops and you're parking against a walkway and you don't have wheel stops, then we're going to make that walkway a minimum of 8 feet wide. So again, if you have that truck where you overhang and you pull all the way up, it ensures that walkway is wide enough and you can get around it. Or you can put in the wheel stops and you don't have to do that. So again, that sort of went to it. The next is really this change with regard to, that we hear a lot, and you've heard this on a lot of the PDDs have come in, is the reduction in number of parking spaces for a multifamily project. As was noted, currently the ordinance says you have to provide 1.5 spaces per one-bedroom unit, 2 spaces per two-bedroom unit, 2.5 spaces per 3+ bedroom unit, and then 5% additional for visitor parking. The challenge that you get with that is we have found that at times the bedroom mix on units will change. And so it can be problematic to come in at day one and say, how much parking do I have to have? And staff says, it depends. How many bedrooms is each unit going to have? And they go, well, we're not sure. It can be fluid. We kind of see what the market does. And our answer is, then we can't tell you how many parking spaces you have to have. And it's problematic. I think the other thing we hear is folks assume that everyone in the apartment complex who lives there has a car and drives. And that's not often the case, and that's where you get over parking. So again, we heard from the developer of the apartment project on 1518 that has a lot of units with a lot of bedrooms. And what they've said is, it's kids. It's kids who can't drive that tend to live there as opposed to a lot of people with a lot of cars, or it's an individual who rents an apartment by themselves. He says, I got one car going forward. And so what we recommended is 1.7 parking spaces with that additional 5% added on. When we compared that to a few projects in town that we knew that kind of mix, it equated to only about a 5% reduction in the amount of parking. Now again, that'll vary from project to project based on bedroom mix. But again, we felt like, since we have heard, I think literally from every apartment developer who's come in or kicked the tires, you guys require way too much parking, that this was something that we felt like made sense as a standard. Again, I would offer this up. If we find it's not working, we can change it in the future, as opposed to, well, let's make sure everything happens. I will say this is one that we looked at and we talked with P&Z, and there are some communities that have a very similar standard to us. There's some communities that have the reduced standard similar to what we're proposing. Folks are just sort of all over the board. And again, part of what we talked about is, for example, if you looked at San Marcos, they're likely going to have a higher parking ratio because San Marcos is the home of Texas State. Go Bobcats. And they've got a lot of college students living in a lot of those cases. They each have their own car. That's very different than San Antonio may have around downtown, where part of the reason people live there is they don't want to drive as much. So again, that was one of the changes that we proposed that we hear from folks quite a bit on. And that's sort of the gist of that. And then again, with that recommendation on parking space size, we're changing the graphics. So if you don't change the parking space size, the graphics that lay out the parking wouldn't change. The next area that we wanted to tackle, and this is a big one, is landscaping. And one of the things that we've got is we've got two sections that kind of cover the landscape requirements, the additional design requirements, and then the landscaping section itself. And we often have people come in and they've gone through the landscape section in detail, and staff says, that's great, but you missed the entire other section. 2114 is a 21.9, and you have to do this and this. So part of the idea is let's take it out of there, let's incorporate in what we want to do. The other thing, as I noted, is we have a very long landscape section. I cannot think of, and I don't know if Emily, you remember the last time somebody turned in a landscape plan on a commercial project that didn't have comments from staff. It's just a very long section. It's a lot of requirements. They're all over the place. They're all mixed together. Staff spends a lot of time on it, and then we get a lot of frustration from the developers because often they say, well, I don't have room to do that. And staff says, yeah, I get it, but that's what it says you have to do. So a couple of things that we did when we approached this. So first and foremost, consistent with the other, we said, what is all the stuff that we really need to regulate, and how much does it matter? So for example, we have in the code about 5 pages that is our approved landscape list. And that's for trees and shrubs and ground cover and things like that. And it lays out, the common name and the scientific name, and then we get variations that come in that staff says, yeah, I think this is a red-tip photinia, but it's got a slightly different scientific name. Does it match? Does it meet? Does it not? And we're trying to scramble to figure it out. People are doing hybrids, and technically we have there. But the question really is, most of what we get in from commercial sites, it's done by a landscape architect. It's somebody who went to college and spent 4 or 5 years figuring out what to do. And frankly, how much do we really feel the need to insert ourselves and say, you can't plant this kind of a tree that you want to, that your landscape architecture plan says would be good, because it's not on our list. And so again, part of this is turning back and saying, I'm still getting the trees, still getting the shrubs, I'm not going to micromanage what you do. We're going to take that whole thing out. You can pick what you use, and now staff doesn't have to go through every one of those plant species and determine, is it on our list, is it not on our list, if that makes sense. The other thing we did is we segregated the code to have single-family and duplex standards together. So if you're a builder, primarily, because I don't have a lot of duplex, and you're building a house, this is what you have to do. And then if you're doing some commercial multifamily, this is what you have to do. So a couple of things that we did with the single family and duplex. One is we took out a lot of the provisions, frankly, that say what you have to do upon the initial CO, that you have to keep the stuff alive, that you have to keep it there, because I cannot remember the last time we went out to Councilman Davis's house and said, technically this is the standard you're built on, you're supposed to have this, or you maintaining it. We just defer to residents to do what they want with their yards once we're done. And you know, again, people keep them up, people don't, but not really out here. So we cut out a number of things there. What we left in, though, is we left in the requirement to sod. And so we have a requirement that unless you have a really big lot, you have to put in sod over most of it, and that's for erosion control. The recommendation was to keep that. We still have the requirement for a sprinkler system. That has to stay in to keep it up. We reduced the number of trees you have to plant from 3 to 2. Again, we hear from people going, well, I want to put in a pool. I don't want that tree in my backyard dropping leaves in my pool. Well, the code says 3. Feeling was, we'll do 2. Sort of works for everybody. If people want to go in and put in more trees, they can go in and put more trees in, but we're not going to mandate it. The other thing that we did, and this, again, I will be clear that it is one that we haven't enforced. We talked about it, and the idea is that if we leave this in some form, then we are going to start enforcing it. So currently, we have a provision that requires new landscaping shall be prepared so as to achieve a soil depth of at least 6 inches. So 6 inches of soil. We haven't enforced it. Most people don't do it. But if you think again about every yard and coming in with a full 6 inches, that's a significant cost to most of those lots. And so the idea is we're going to do 2 inches, and that's what's required. That carries over to commercial. But one of the things we talked about with the committee is if council passes this and says 2 inches, then we're going to tell folks when we come out, you need to have 2 inches. Now again, hopefully, you will not see our building inspectors walking out there with a ruler and sticking it down and, you know, getting down and going, you're 1/8 of an inch off. But the idea is, yeah, they're going to walk out, press something down and kind of go, yeah, you got a couple inches, you don't. And if you don't have a couple inches, you've just got a light dusting of topsoil, they're going to require you to bring in topsoil on it. That's the idea, is if we want this provision. I think the idea of the subcommittee was, if we want this stuff to stay alive, there needs to be that soil as opposed to having the property driven over and over, packed down tight with a bunch of rock and things like that. So it's a reduction in standard, but we haven't enforced the past. We would enforce this going forward. Generally, what we've done then is we've pulled out commercial. Now, we've left the requirements in that you have to maintain it going forward. And what we've kind of done is we've taken all those standards and we've modified them a little bit. So a couple things that we've done is we've reduced some of the requirements. So for instance, one requirement that industrial developers hate is if you've got an industrial project next to an industrial project, you have 2 parking areas next to each other, you're required to both plant shrub rows to screen your industrial parking from your neighbor's industrial parking. And again, industrial sites are big, so we will have 300, 400, 500 feet of shrubs that have to be planted on 2 properties. There doesn't seem to be a reason for that. It's an industrial park. We can make it look nice. We can have a landscape out in the front, but we don't need to treat it as though it's a commercial site necessarily. The other thing is we've reduced some of the standards that prove most problematic in terms of, again, provisions such as if the front of your property is encumbered with easements that will not let you plant trees, you don't have to plant the trees. That's a big one that we find. Somebody comes in and says, I've got a 20-foot utility easement for the city or water sewer easement, I got a 5-foot AT&T easement. I'm back 35 feet before I have to put these trees in. How much land do I need? It accounts for that sort of going forward. So while we think why it modifies some of the standards, reduces them a little bit, we think the commercial standard isn't something people are going to notice a lot of difference about. We think it works better with residents, provides better standards in the community, allows staff to enforce the provisions that make the most sense and have the most impact. And we generally get the same look and feel that we do in the community. And hopefully we get folks keeping it up better than they would otherwise because it's a little more reasonable for them. Because I got to tell you, those industrial users don't care about those shrubs once they go in. But that's fundamentally the changes that we're proposing. Again, P&Z did not recommend approval of reducing the parking space size. They were pretty emphatic. They want 10 by 8 or the 10 by 20 going forward. But again, that's our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. James. All right. This item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject? Please state your name and address, and you are limited to 3 minutes.
Richard Moss, 3434 Wimbledon, and I think you got the idea on the parking. We're getting bigger, everybody's getting bigger, the trucks are getting bigger. To go to a smaller size makes no sense. That's my opinion there. And then going to the section about for parking for multifamily, I think that was one of the main sticking points or the main points of contention on the townhomes that were going in Northcliffe was the whole idea that they were going to use a garage as a parking spot. Well, if your garage isn't big enough for your truck, how can you put your truck in the garage? See, and we never got any information. They also told us that there was going to be a storage area so people wouldn't use their garage. Again, we got absolutely no information from anybody on the size of this parking, this storage, the size of the garage, anything like that. So now everybody's looking at, well, how can you regulate this? There's only 20 feet between the different buildings. Well, if you have a truck that's longer than 20 feet, you can't park between the buildings either. And you can't park in your driveway because you block the driveway. So that whole thing, I think, is why I'm really against the idea of reducing the parking for multifamily. I understand the apartment thing, just like you said, there's studios, there's all different kinds. That makes sense. But if you have a townhome development of 3-bedroom places, they have to have parking someplace. 1.7 is not going to do you any good at all. And I was very glad that Brian was talking about working on the UDC. And I gave you in my things, the number one thing to me in the UDC is the plain language and actually defining words that are used all over in there so people understand what they mean. And Brian can tell you, I've spent lots of time talking to him. I've talked to the city manager, and the idea, why isn't it in plain language? This has been around for a long, long time. And if you're working on the UDC, why not make that a priority so that everybody has the same idea of what everybody's talking about, so then you don't have so many problems with people just getting excited about something that could have been handled easily. And I'm not going to talk about landscaping. I'll save you that one. I could not get through that one at all. So that one I'm not going to talk about. And then I guess my last thing is, I kind of wandered into this 6 months ago when the first PDD came up with Northcliffe. So I've talked to Brian plenty of times and a lot of different other people about it, and I really don't get what the idea behind recommendation is, because they're supposed to recommend to you something. But to me, it doesn't sound like a recommendation. It sounds like, yes, they've checked the boxes. Well, I would like to know why they're recommending and why it's not check the boxes. I mean, to me, there's a big difference. And on this one, I think they made some statement about approved. That was the whole thing of it, was approved, which to me, like I said, doesn't make any sense. Thank you, guys.
Hi, Ashley Fairmont again. Here to speak on behalf of Quick Trip tonight, and also Kathy Garland and Mike Wooten from Quick Trip are here as well. We really appreciate the consideration of the extension of the time for the SUP to get the building permit. As many of you probably remember, we've now zoned 3 Quick Trips in the city. One of them, which is currently being worked on, has not been built yet. The first 2, which are open, we actually rezoned each of them twice. So each of those extended the 1-year term to get the building permit. Just, when we come in and zone, they don't own the property yet, and then have to go through preliminary plat, site plan, final plat, and then building permit, and it just takes longer than a year. So we really appreciate your consideration. Maybe that 3rd site, if this UDC amendment is approved, we won't have to come back and zone again for the 2nd time. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council? Going once, going twice? Public hearing is closed. Okay, council questions. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Brian, for all the great information. I'm okay with just about all the proposed changes. I'm okay with removing the restriction from R6 and R7 because we still have the zoning process where if somebody wants to come in, and it gives us another tool in the toolbox, another option to consider in some of the ways that the city's growing. I do like the fact that we included a max lot size, so someone's not going to come in and put in 200 acres of whatever, but I don't think that's a bad option to put back into the mix. I'm glad to see the overhaul of the landscaping section. That's, I think, long overdue. I do like the recalculations. The guy behind the table here adjusting my volume. He turned it the wrong way, didn't he? I do like the cleaner calculations for the number of parking spaces. I think that'd be good for the staff and easier for everybody else. But I have to agree with planning and zoning. I'm not a big fan of the 9 by 18. I do want to find out where you shop because in my experience, the only people that are parking out at the far end of the parking lot are those that are trying to get their steps in, or they've got a Mercedes, BMW, brand new Mustang or pickup truck that they don't want their door dinged. Everybody closer to the building is there because they want to get in and out faster. And it seems like we have a lot of people that just don't even understand how to pull in straight to a parking spot. So that extra foot or so on either side might help them. I'm okay with everything else other than I would concur with planning and zoning to keep the parking spots at 10 by 20.
Councilmember Whitaker.
So, let's see. Parking, can you compare, what do the other communities around us do?
It's a mix.
Okay, so
Sound like I'm being heard.
there you go.
It's a mix. So what you saw is traditionally, like when I started as a planner 25 years ago, pretty much everybody out there was doing 9 by 18. You've seen more communities go to 10 by 20, but it's still a mix. Some still require the 9 by 18. Others are 10 by 20. 10 by 20 has become more common. I think, again, and as Mr. Moss said, you get more people driving bigger trucks. People like the extra elbow room. And that worked generally fine. We didn't get a ton of complaints on it. We get people say, wait, what do you mean yours are 10 by 20? That they didn't know. But it seems like as development costs have gone up, and as some of our regulations on detention have increased, the parking size thing has become more problematic. You do see some community do compact spaces, but again, we just felt that was too tricky. So you get communities that do different things. And then again, a lot of our spaces are still 9 by 18 because they were built before our code went up. So it's not like you go a place and every space in that community is 10 by 20, but it's a mixed bag.
So we're talking about new development. I've never noticed a difference in parking sizes. I guess I'm a good parker. I just go right in the middle of the spot. It seems to work. I don't know.
We did measure and you do park well, because I think staff was looking forward to let's highlight Councilwoman Whitaker's inability to park well, and they said, nope, she's right in the middle.
My inability, thank you. Okay. I'm not a fan of going from 3 to 2 trees for people who want to put in a pool. If you can put in a pool, you can take out a tree. I don't know. That's just my personal preference. I like trees, and I do think that that makes the community feel, one of the things I despise about new development is just whoosh, like they just chop everything down and they start from scratch. And so you're already at a disadvantage because it looks like it's been clear cut and you just, stick one in the front, you stick one in the back or whatever. I don't know, but I don't know how much of a difference that'll make, but I'm not a big fan of that. But so we're taking out all of the plant species, which that's great that you don't have to check and make sure. Are there any species that we want to make sure we don't allow, that we should?
Yeah.
Poison ivy.
I don't know. Like the allergy. What? We have business here.
So I will say, let me offer this up. There are certainly some species that don't make sense in certain areas. So again, you typically, in a daycare setting, don't want to plant a variety that's poisonous. We don't see that happening, though, and so it's not really necessary. We have also, unlike some communities, we have not taken stance on sort of invasive species.
I think that's what I was getting
And
at.
that some communities have. Out, and I can't remember who it is out in Del Rio or somebody out there has banned a particular type of tree for those sort of reasons. We also have not pushed water conservation necessarily, and so we haven't done that. And so there are reasons you might want to do things in certain circumstances. I think what staff found is that's just not something we've really seen as an issue. What we tend to find is most people say, what can I get up at Mortal Arrows? What can the landscape architect get in? And that's what they're using. The other thing that we found is they can't get a particular species. So one of the issues we have is they go, I'm trying to get CO'd, but they don't have this stuff in. So particularly after the freezes come through, it's hard to find, and they're often scrambling for what they can get. And so there is some value to that. I think what staff looked at with this is how much value is really created by the time we have to enforce that and make everyone aware of it. And I think this is one that we said, we really don't think it's too much of a problem. People tend to make thoughtful decisions. And frankly, I would say the bulk of the plantings are probably pretty similar across most sites that come in. They're kind of all using the same stuff, and then you get some weird stuff thrown in. So there can be value. We didn't feel like it was enough to regulate.
Okay, yeah, no, I don't want to regulate that because we.
And certainly, I think, it's one that we'll have conversations. We'll occasionally remind people, are you sure you really want to plant that? That drops things. Or are you sure you really want to plant that kind of tree in a parking lot? It tends to attract grackles, things like that. We'll kind of point.
Grackles?
Grackles. Grackles, the birds.
The crackles, the HEB birds. The black ones.
Oh,
The HEB birds.
got it. Okay, that's all I have.
Councilmember Watson?
No, I did want to, since I do have a large truck, I have
We've
parked.
noticed.
And I have tried to go smaller, and I have no problems parking. Now, if they're riding the lines, I will just drive a little further down
There you
and
go.
park it.
Get some
because
steps
even
in.
if you go outside right now, I have my Camaro diagonal. So as long as I fit in there, I'm fine. But I can go smaller.
I did think of a follow-up question. When we talk about 10 by 20 and the costs associated with that, do we have any provisions in the UDC that deals with facilities that put in designated spots for compact cars?
We don't. So again, our requirement is everybody's got the same parking space. And again, we talked about that in the committee. There was a talk, well, what if we allowed a certain number of smaller ones or compact, and then a certain number bigger, or the ones bigger, closer? And this is not to say there's not value in that. One of the fundamental things we approach this with is to try to simplify the ordinance and not make it too tricky, and to have to go through and go, well, you're allowed, 20% of your spaces have to be 10 by 20 and the rest can be 9 by 18. I can guarantee staff is going to have to take the time to go through and check that. And then I can also guarantee you will have somebody come in who says, I'm not quite there. I don't quite have that percentage. I'm 5 spaces off. And I think that's the other thing philosophically we talked about with these ordinance changes in the committee is we get hit with a lot of people wanting to deviate from these site development standards because we have a lot of them, because they're really rigid, because we haven't thought about them in a long time. And what we tried to do is, as we talked about, well, there can be a variance, or there can be an exception, or this, that, and the other, and staff is going, how am I supposed to make the call to grant an exception or not? We'll just kick it up to the city manager, let him decide. When somebody doesn't like it, we can blame it on him. But the problem with that, too, is developers don't know if they'll get it. They're going, I need to know if I can do this or not. And so what we sort of said as a philosophy is, look, let's modify our standards, let's focus on the stuff that's important, the stuff that doesn't add a lot of value, let's drop, but then kind of go with the approach, not that there isn't some unusual circumstance somewhere, but generally, this is it. We've thought about it, we've looked at it, and that's what you need to do. We're not going to get into that slippery slope kind of thing. And so that was, I think, the logic, not say there's right or wrong. It was just to make it more clear, it's one standard, that's what everything is.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like everything that you guys have proposed to clean up everything. But again, at the end of the day, then, if across the greater Tri-County area, there's a mix of 9 by 18 and 10 by 20, it doesn't seem as though Schertz is the only one going to 10 by 20, thereby creating a substantial inconvenience for a developer going forward. It's something that they probably are used to.
Yeah,
through the whole
most
area.
people today, I would say, it happens less often than it did when we first passed. So when we first passed, we got more people walking in going, what do you mean you're not 9 by 18? Now we're 10 by 20. That happens less often, but occasionally we'll get some people walking in knowing it. And again, what it tends to be is their site is tight, and they start figuring, how can I fit this? And part of what it is, it's a balance between impacting the functionality of the site versus if I could just reduce the parking space size kind of thing.
But they can also request a variance to.
They could. Here's the issue, and again, we spent a lot of time on this one. The problem we have with the variance, and we say, well, they can go request a variance, is generally, and I'm being real blunt, they are trying to put more stuff on the property than will fit. So the site could easily fit a 10,000 square foot office building, but the finances behind theirs and what they want to do, they need to want to fit a 12,000 square foot building on it. It's rare that we get the circumstance where the back of the half of the property is a cliff that drops off 50 feet. What it is people just want to sort of build more on their site than really works. And so the problem staff has is, why is it okay here versus here? Because literally everybody will come in and make that same argument. That's what we
Yeah,
find.
I understand, but I mean, I'm looking more like the variance where if you're short a few parking spots because of the size, you would think there would be there's a process for them to work through that. If it's a significant problem, then again, I think you've hit the nail on the head. They're trying to put something that should not be on the lot that they're trying to put it on.
So, and if I may, and I appreciate that, and I think we spent a lot of time in those subcommittee meetings with just that thing. And so here's what we talked about a lot, the example. We require a 20-foot landscape buffer between a commercial site and a single-family residential development on the backside. The developer walks in and goes, I can't quite get 20 feet. I'm really close. Are you guys coming out with a tape measure? I can get 19 feet, 6 inches. We'd all kind of go, it's just 6 inches, right? That kind of is okay. But then we get the next guy walking in going, I can't quite get 20 feet, I'm 17 feet. And then literally we get somebody else come in, hey, well, the last project, remember I came in and you let me drop to 17 feet, I'm 15 feet. And I understand the reaction is that staff seems very rigid, but literally our response would be, if you're okay with 19 feet, 6 inches, make it 19 feet, 6 inches. If you're okay with 17 feet, just make the standard 17 feet. That's sort of the problem we get into, because literally, when do we say no? At what point does it tip and use that example of the landscape buffer that's 20 feet. What's the tipping point of that? Does that make sense? And I
You know,
appreciate-
it makes sense to me, but I mean, you know, at the end of the day, though, we're talking about construction and building stuff, and you know, I just would marvel at anybody that if you turn around and say, I need a 20-foot buffer. I mean, there are some people that you say it's a 20-foot buffer, and they put in a 21-foot buffer, or a 22-foot.
Sure.
You know, to me, it's kind of unlikely that everybody that comes in here has got a exact 20-foot buffer. Or, you know, I bet you if I went out to some of our parking lots, I'll find some that are not quite 20 by 10. I might find one that's, you know, so to me,
You will.
to me, there are certain characteristics or certain aspects of the code that, you know, you could also word it to say you need a 20-foot landscape buffer with a degree of variation of like no more than 5%.
Sure.
So that it would come out and say, okay, it's, the standard's 20 foot, but if you're building it and it's 20 foot, 20 foot, 20 foot, and then because of some anomaly in your lot, it goes to 19 and a half feet, then you could say, okay, that's not stopping the world. However, if the anomaly says it goes to 18 feet or 17 and a half or 17, now you've got a problem because you're not in with that variance.
That's right. And so that makes perfect sense. So the two drawbacks, if I may, to that we could do that is, one is that's getting tricky, so it's not as clean and clear, which is kind of philosophically. The other, and again, Emily can tell you what'll happen, they're going to come in and say, I can't quite get that 5% variance for 1 foot. I need 7% for 1.5 feet. I mean, and would you agree? That we can all stand here and say this little bit makes a difference, but I can also look back and say, and you know this, they will come in and ask for that slight bit more, and that's the challenge.
But you're going to have that challenge. I understand it, but you're going to have that challenge anyway.
So let me say this to be clear. As I said with the topsoil depth, when staff goes out to CO sites, they will occasionally kind of step off parking spaces and go, this looks sort of funny, but they are literally not going through and counting every shrub and saying, it says 30, you've got 29. So I want to be clear here. Staff tries to not be overly nitpicky, right? But the problem staff has, and let's use this, the big zoning case that came tonight. They've got that 20-foot landscape buffer required on the north side. If staff let that thing go at 19 feet, I can guarantee you that if the residents found that out, they would be after staff's heads going, the standard is 20, you cut them loose at 19. That's where this stuff is problematic. And I think that's the thing that really we struggled with quite a bit, is how do we do this? And so on the one hand, you're hearing me say staff is not super nitpicky at going out there and scaling off to the infinite inch. But what we find is developers are like children in some ways. You give an inch, you take a mile, it builds on itself. And our approach was literally to say, let's take out the stuff that's not reasonable. Let's really kind of scale it back because what we have is a minimum. And that then the approach is, this is our standard. This is what you have to do. We've thought about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot. We've kind of given when we came down from the standard. You just need to make it work. And not that there won't be some really unusual circumstance or thing like that. There probably will be. But again, the struggle staff gets into is, what's the basis to support or deny the waiver request? So not a right or wrong, just the logic. Yes, ma'am.
By 18 or something.
Yeah, I mean, what we
So
have, our
that's going to
standards
be
are
on
minimum. Yeah, it's a minimum. So if you want to go bigger, you can go bigger. Instead of the 20 foot, you want to do 21 feet. That's perfectly fine, allowed by code. What we have are minimum standards.
Councilmember Dalla.
Just to touch on a couple things, the straight R6, R7 zoning, you know, that comes back from the council subcommittee with the P&Z. The one thing that Brian forgot, I know he had a lot to talk about, was that straight R6, R7 zoning was also included some additional enhancement over what it typically would include, with the curvilinear streets, the bump outs for the
That's right.
mailboxes, a few other little detail items to.
And those provisions you passed last time are
Right.
in the next section that's coming on the curvilinear street.
The SUP, I think it's totally fine. I think that makes sense. It's logical. The parking, I support the 9x18, and here's what that impact is if you're going to build 110,000 square foot building, land acquisition to building that building ready to move in, nowadays you're looking at about $40 million. When you look at the parking requirements on a building that size, and you can reduce the parking area by 20%, in terms of your capital investment to build that building and get it ready to open, you're looking at a cost differential between $500,000 and $1 million, whether you're using asphalt or concrete. That can make a big difference on somebody that wants to put in a big box retail store in our city, rethink what they want to do, and go to somewhere else. So.
Councilmember Brown. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
It's a small crowd. Again, kind of wrap up overall, the SUP thing. Now, we are going to require kind of a concept layout.
So to be
design.
clear, we are not going to require that fundamentally.
Okay.
What we have is that when it hits P&Z can say, because of the particulars of this one, I want to require a site layout. They can choose to do that.
Without having to go through all the engineering and all.
That's right. But normally, again, let's say the fourth QT that comes in and they want an SUP, staff is going to say, don't need a site plan, don't need a site layout, we can run it. Now, we'll make a recommendation. If it's right next to a neighborhood and we think something is an issue, we may say, yeah, why don't you do a site layout with it? But otherwise, we wouldn't require a site
That's
layout.
fair.
So we get, say, a QT coming in at I-10 and 35, or 35 and 3009, or 35 and I-10 and 1518.
There you go.
We would not require that site layout. It doesn't really matter how they lay it out. They're going to lay it out how they laid it out, then I'm sure they're paying a lot of people a lot of money to look at efficiencies and safety and things like that.
Well,
Doesn't seem relevant.
And not to be too nice to them, but QT is a good example. They know what they want, they know how they're doing their business, everything else. It's folks that haven't worked in Schertz, haven't worked in the area. They're new to the design and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, let me say this, so because we put that site layout, when staff gets that application, part of, our job is twofold. It's to ensure that they meet the goals and objectives policies of the city, but it's also to try to help them through the process.
Right.
And so we try to give them a heads up, you're going to struggle on this, you probably need to do a site layout.
One thing I didn't notice anywhere is we have all these districts for residential. We don't have any allowance, at least nothing that I could see, for infill construction in existing communities. For example, Old Schertz. Can somebody go in there and build a new home? Can they build a duplex in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's.
I didn't extract that.
No, that's okay. So yeah, if you have, say there's a vacant lot over in aviation that's kind of been there for however long or whatever, somebody can walk in and pull a permit for a new.
I know they got to meet all the other requirements.
They've got to meet all the requirements. And that would be where I would say there potentially is a case for a variance to be made. And so, for example, if you have a lot that was platted years ago, and because of our development standards eating up more and more room, and we all look at it and say, I don't know how you're going to get anything on that, that would likely be where we would recommend a variance.
Right.
Because it's too small to sort of fit anything.
But we still should have that capability because, not everything is in a floodplain down there. But
That's right. And so, yeah, there's nothing that stops you from coming in and pulling a building permit over there. We just don't have a whole lot of vacant lots. And I think the floodplain hinders it. But yeah, you can do infill.
Right. The wording, I understand the shall versus should, but I think we've had this concept, this conversation before. If you limit the staff so much that they have no problem-solving or solution capability, we lose flexibility as a city as well. I think keeping a certain amount of shoulds, in a product like that they're professionals. You know, we hire them as professionals. They should be able to make a few decisions on their own, not to be pushed, by,
Yeah, I don't want to imply staff is overly rigid, because, again, literally, staff does make some of those judgment calls that technically the code doesn't allow, and we'll say that, and they'll walk down and go, just to let you know, this is what I did. Yeah, that's fine, or I'll send them an email going, yeah, I'm fine with you doing this.
and I firmly believe we need to give them that authority, that capability to provide a solution to a problem that's out there.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah, when
without
you show
having
up at a site and they're missing a parking space off the end because there was a bust in something.
Make it a compact spot, call it a day.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there you go. And the last thing is, you know, we with all the amount of multifamily that we do have coming in, we don't have public transportation. And I don't want, this has got nothing to do with UDC, but it's just something we need to kind of think about again, because the amount, you know, the developers say, oh, they're all going to be families with one car. Well, we all know that they're probably not going to do that because they have no public transportation. You know, so right now, we're going to be saddled with more cars than not until we have that public transportation option. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well in the short term, so. What's that? Unless you're on a golf cart?
Licensed golf carts for street use.
Yeah. And that can be, so.
Councilmember Hayward, any comments?
Yes, Councilwoman.
Yes, excuse me, yes. I'm on board with part of the subcommittee. And the parking spot, I have a Suburban and parking spots, and I can tell in San Antonio Park. And then I'm back parking. There's a big difference. For
Councilmember
me,
Hayward?
I understand the concept of why we want the 9 by 18, if we're actually wanting more development, some want it, and then the flip side of that is, if they really want to be in church, they will follow what, I believe that if we're accustomed to 10 by 18, we have 10 by 18, and I know that what I like is, I don't want to complicate it. I think if we're going to do whatever we decide to do, it has to be 10 by 20 or 9 by 18 and make it simple so the staff can just go, here's what it is, this is what you need to do. Because when you're looking for variances, they've got to prove some kind of hardship, and that may not always be the case when they're trying to prove that hardship parking spot. And then I think, as like Brian said when we had the conversation, if we're okay with letting someone go 10 by 9.6, then let's just make it that. Because every time someone comes in and say, oh, I need a variance, and then let's say they end up going to Board of Adjustments, they're trying to provide that reason why it's a hardship. Then if we're constantly sending people for those parking lot variances, figure out how to get that done, then we need to make it the way it needs to be and simplify it. I know the whole process is simplified. And as far as the going down from 3 trees to 2 trees, they 3 trees in my yard, and 2 of them were live oak. One of them was the driveway that it started as small as it was and growing. The root started messing with my driveway. So I like the idea of the 2 trees because a lot of sizes are 65, whatever. You know, the front, and you're putting in these big, huge live oak trees that will eventually grow to hard. That just doesn't work. Let them go smaller trees. So I like the idea of the 10 by 20. However, maybe I'd like to make it, what would be the idea of motion to go with a 10 by 18 so we kind of split the middle?
Oh, yeah, do a 10 by 18.
10 by 18.
So her suggestion is, gives you a little more width, should be hanging out. It's a single standard, so staff's not opposed to that either. But again, it's really a personal preference kind of thing.
Come to my street. We have 1 car for every 23 trucks and SUVs.
Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, there's still so many questions left unanswered with the parking standards and things. I really think it'd be a good idea to take that out of this particular ordinance and leave it for a workshop discussion. The 10 by 20, yeah, I kind of like that, but I also like the idea of reducing some of these sizes. I understand it's a little bit of work to actually juggle that, but sometimes a little bit extra work is required to get exactly what you want. And the other thing is, I really, really don't like the idea of going down to 1.7 for in apartment buildings, townhouses. I have absolutely never heard anybody say, wow, you know what? I think we got too much parking available here. I've never heard that. Like I said, pull it, and let's turn it into a workshop sometime. The other thing I have is I don't know. Did we ever address the carports and the sight lines on carports? Was that in here any place?
No, we
where
did not.
Looked at that.
What do you mean with carports?
Generally, some people are building we allowed them to build carports, and they build it right out to the sidewalk. Oh, my goodness. That should not be allowed.
So I don't think we allow carports up to the sidewalk. I can go back and
I've
look at
seen
that
'em.
section.
Yeah, okay.
There's some old ones like that.
Yeah, okay.
I
I
thought there
was
was
just
some,
wondering.
limits
Because it looked a little, it looks a little cluttered. And the other thing is, I'm still really, really confused about the R6 on 30 acres max versus the R7 on 40 acres max. Can you give me an example? I understand that the intention was to reduce density. I think that's what we kind of are pushing for. So let's take a lot, 35 acres. Well, 35 acres, you couldn't put in R6 because it's 30 max. Okay? But you could sure enough put in R7. What is the sense in that if you're intending to reduce the density? The smart thing would be, if I was a developer, hey, R7 goes in, and I would never have a need to even consider R6.
Sure. So I think the logic, let me hit on a couple things. I think the logic of the R6 and R7, again, was, as Councilman Davis said, council can choose to grant that or choose not. And it's case by case, and it's sort of appropriate. And I think the idea is that likely we will grant less of the R7 zoning. And so the idea is we'll give them a little more room for the R7. We'll give a little bit less for the R6, because most of the time with that size property, you're going to come in and you're going to do a mix of zoning districts.
And once again, that's backwards.
It may be.
Because the density is greater for an R7.
It is.
And if the intention is to reduce density, then those numbers should be swapped.
So you certainly can. I will say this. I think the point of the committee was not to reduce density. The point of the committee was we had reduced density too much, and we need to come back and allow greater density going forward. I think.
No, putting a moratorium on it was reducing it too much.
Sure.
But, the basic concept behind it is still valid.
Understood. And so again, let me come back. A zoning event is discretionary. Council can choose to say, we like this, it's appropriate. We don't like this, it's not appropriate. We can choose to approve it. We can choose not to approve it going forward. I think you're right. Oftentimes what we have are we pass these ordinances, and if we said a moratorium's gone too far, we tend to kind of come back. So we can come back and modify this stuff if it doesn't work, depending on what we see folks do. But I think the idea was we're going to limit it, we're going to allow some, but again, we'd rather not do as many developments that are smaller, so the ones we get will be a little bit bigger, and not let everybody who comes in do that smallest lot size kind of going forward. I think the carport thing, the challenge we have is there still the requirement that it needs to match the building material?
It needs to be part of the building.
It needs to be
Yes,
attached to the
attached
building,
to the
and I can't
building.
remember if the columns had to be faced or something, but we had amended the carport a couple years ago.
Okay, that's
Oh, do
fine.
you remember, Lisa? Oh, Lisa, I didn't see she was here, and she knows. She is probably our carport expert.
That's cool.
Yes, she is. You can talk.
So we do have a flyer on the website, and so the carports, they have to be attached to the home. They can't exceed 1 story in height. They have to be over a driveway, a paved surface. They have to be set back a minimum of 5 feet from the property line. And
Okay,
then-
hold on now. 5 feet from the property line.
Right.
Is that the street? Is that the sidewalk? Is that what defines the property line?
So the property line, usually, most of the residential streets have a certain pavement width, and usually they have a parkway, which is the piece that holds the sidewalk, and usually a 2-foot green space area of either 8 to 10 feet, depending on the size of the street in the parkway. So typically, the property line is set back 8 to 10 feet from the roadway. And then it's
8 to 10 feet. You've
in
got
another 5 feet.
Another 5 feet, so it should be
Yeah.
13 feet from the road.
Generally, if the parkway is correct.
Any of the new ones that are
Okay,
built.
all right, that's good. Okay, hey, it was just an aberrant thought, I figured get it out there. But I think the primary thing is, I really would like to sit down and discuss these parking standards at a further future workshop, just to iron it out.
Sure, and again, I think staff's thought would be, recommend what you think is appropriate. And if it's to keep the 10 by 20, if it's to go higher, go with that. If council certainly wants to spend more time with it, we can. What I think staff would say is, we've got a whole lot of other ordinances that we feel like we want to get to and we can add value with. So our signage ordinance, some stuff with our Board of Adjustment sections. We've got other things we need to get to. And again, and I know what staff is recommending, we're perfectly fine if council says, look, for now, we're not ready to do that. And if council wants to do the work sessions, we can. What we would say is, just go with what you want, and let's leave it, and let's keep working on the other ordinance sections. And then if we get those done in a year, year and a half, we can come back around to it, tackle it at that point. I will say this, I'm not sure that having more information really is going to help you make a better decision on parking space size. You're either kind of okay with it or not,
okay,
and you
yeah.
kind of thought about it in this 20 minutes we've been talking about it, and I'm not sure anything we're going to do is going to change your mind.
With
I think
that
the-
in question, I think Dr. Scagliola is right. Let's go ahead and I'll make a motion to approve, the chair will make a motion to approve ordinance number 23S07, omitting Article 10, parking standards, subsection 21.10.2, 21.10.3, 21.10.4, 21.10.7C, and 21.10.9. So everything else.
Point of order. Do you mean
Yes.
omit those sections, or do you mean not changing them?
No, omitting for further discussion on the parking.
So
So we're passing everything except the parking standards.
I'll defer to the attorney, he's shaking his head, yes, okay. A second.
Okay, motion's been made by the chair, second by Councilmember Scagliola, omitting the parking standards, so we can have a workshop or a separate discussion. So that we can, they can look at this a little closer, okay? Okay, motion's been made. Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Whitaker.
Just to clarify, there was a subcommittee that discussed all of these items. Who was on the subcommittee?
Yes, Councilmember
Myself and Hayward.
Hayward and myself.
So we had, okay.
But it was a big discussion, like I said. It
talked
consumed
about a
most of
lot.
the time.
All I would say is that, having been on the subcommittee for the standards that we talked about, the size of the lots and all that
talked
with
a
planning
lot.
and zoning, if the subcommittee comes out with a recommendation after probably hours of discussion, I feel like it's somewhat redundant and, well, unnecessary to then have another subcommittee/workshop to discuss the same issue you're just going to rehash it. I agree that we're not all going to agree on it. So I feel like tabling that item for later is putting the staff at a disservice or disadvantage because of the time already spent.
Yes, Councilmember Hayward.
Mayor,
Yes.
what I was thinking, because the subcommittee made a recommendation, if we're going to do to not, I guess, vote on the parking. I mean, the parking we could vote on, because to me, the only way when Brian James discussed it in our subcommittee, it was, this is what a lot of developers want, so we either need to decide, do we want to do what the developers need to make things work for them, to be more, or do we want what we want because that's what we want? And we just need to vote for it all, because there's no real workshop on parking size of what's good and what's not, because everywhere around us, everybody else has something different. So in my suggestion, I think we should just say, if everyone wants 10 by 20, then we vote for 10 by 20 and move on. And if we want to say, hey, we're making this advantageous for the developers, then we do 9 by 18 and move on. And let's just vote it, because we keep holding up and knowing that in the subcommittee that we're going through all these different things, trying to simplify the UC, because we kept saying, never dealt with it, we need to deal with it, and it's going to take us a while to get through everything to simplify it. And I think hanging this up on the parking space is just not happening for us. We just need to make a decision and move on.
Yeah. Well, for clarification, we did have an engineer as part of the subcommittee and 2 business owners. So there was a total of 6.
Yeah.
But a motion has been made, and we can come back. If you all want to vote on the parking, we can. But the motion's been made, and it's been second. So
So we'll deal with the motion on the floor and then decide what we're going to do with the parking.
We can do that.
yeah, we can have a separate motion for the parking, definitely. Okay. So let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes, no objection. Motion passes. Now we have to deal with Article 10, parking standards. I'm not reading all these dots.
So, Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the amendment to the UDC for the parking standards to have the 9 by 18 parking spaces.
Second that.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Dalla and second by Councilmember Whitaker.
Okay, that's one section in there.
Mayor, I didn't hear what the motion was.
To approve Article 10 regarding parking standards.
I still, can you speak directly, because I'm having a hard time hearing
Yes,
what
to
that
approve the parking standards 9 by 18,
As proposed,
as proposed on the ordinance.
Okay, I don't have a problem really with the 9 by 18 or 10 by 20. I have a more bigger issue with the going to 1.7 versus a 2.5.
We just approved that.
No, he took out all the
We
parking.
took
took
out
out all the
everything
parking.
except for
there's
parking.
9 pages of parking standards here.
Yeah, we're only making about 5 changes. I understood the mayor's motion be, let's not do anything with parking
Okay.
yet. Let's take the
Yeah.
whole parking stuff
Parking
out.
standard out was taken
And so
out.
what got approved was all the other stuff. Now we're coming back. The motion was to go 9 by 18, but it did not include reducing the bank stacking to 3 spaces and stuff.
Okay, so that's just one
One portion.
particular
One
portion
at a
of
time.
that. Okay.
So there's 2 items that are debatable, is the 9 by 18 and also the 1.7.
The 2 that seem to have the contention is the parking space size, 9 by 18, and reducing the apartment parking standard to 1.7 plus the 5%. I don't think anybody seems to care about the wheel stops or the reduction in bank drive-through stacking.
No, if all we're dealing with is the size of the parking lots, I can deal with that.
All right.
All right.
All right, so motion's been made and seconded?
Was it-
Voting?
Yes, it was, yes.
Okay.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Dalla, second by Councilmember Whitaker, to approve Article 10, parking standards and all the dots that follow.
9 by 18.
9 by 18. No less than 9 by 18.
9 by 18.
Only regarding the size of the parking space to 9 by 18.
That's right.
No, it's the under,
The motion, I believe.
The
that
motion was for the 9 by 18.
Was just 9
just
by 18.
9 by 18, okay.
I'll make a separate motion for the 1.7.
And it's on one of those dots.
It's on one of the dots.
I'm just trying to simplify it, so those people watching YouTube, it is only the 9 by 18 of the parking standards that the motion and second was made. Okay. Any other discussion, council? Go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
We have 2 objections and 5 yeas. Motion passes. Okay, now we deal with the parking standards.
For
and
multifamily.
multifamily.
So, Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the recommendation to reduce the parking requirements to 1.7 and plus 5%.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we do have a second. Okay, motion's been made by Councilmember Dalla and second by Councilmember Whitaker to approve the 1.7 plus a 5% on the
And P&Z
multifamily.
was on board with this, so.
Okay. Any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Nay. Nay.
Aye.
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 We have 4 ayes, 3 objections, motion passes. So everything on the ordinance 23.
Do we need to make a separate motion
We
to?
need a separate motion for all the other changes.
Make a
in the parking
motion to approve the remaining changes as laid out in ordinance 23S07 for parking standards, Article 10.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Whitaker and second by Councilmember Dalla. Any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes.
In on a unanimous vote.
Ms. Edmondson, did you get that? Okay. First motion was made to approve ordinance 23S07, omitting the parking standards. Okay, and that passed 7-0. Second motion was to accept Article 10 regarding the parking standards for the 9 by 18. Yes, the motion was made there. And there were 5 yeas, 2 objections. Mhm. Yes. The second motion was to approve the parking standards for the 1.7 and the 5% variance for multifamily. Councilmember Dalla made the motion and Councilmember Whitaker second. And that motion also passed. I don't remember the 4-3. Yes. That is correct. And the final motion was to approve the remainder of the parking standards. And I didn't write down who made that motion. Jill made the motion, and Dalla second. 7-0 was the. Yes. Because the next part is the roll call confirmation. Ms. Edmondson, our city secretary, will provide the roll call confirmation on consent items 1 through 6, the discussion items 7, 8, and all the various parts of number 9.
Back to number 8, I did get the motion was, I thought it was, the motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Brown and seconded by Scagliola. Then someone said no, Scagliola, and then Dalla seconded.
That is correct.
The second.
Yes, Councilmember Scagliola
Scagliola.
made the motion and Councilmember Dalla seconded.
And that
Yes.
was 7-0?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, 1, 2, 4, 3. Okay, good evening. Consent items number 1 through 6. Councilmember Dalla made the motion. Mayor Pro Tem Brown seconded that motion. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Davis, Watson, Dalla, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 6-0. Item number 8, ordinance number 23S04, first reading. Councilmember Scagliola made the motion. Councilmember Dalla seconded that motion. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Davis, Whitaker, Dalla, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 7-0. I apologize, I read them out of line. That was number 8. If I go back to number 7, ordinance number 23S02, final reading. A motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Scagliola. The motion was made to table the item and bring back to the April 4th meeting of 2023. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Councilmembers Davis, Watson, Whitaker, Dalla, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 7-0 to table that item. I did number 8, so I do apologize for getting them out of line. Number 9, ordinance number 23S01, first reading. The motion was made to pass that ordinance without the subsections, without the parking subsections, 21.10.2, 21.10.3, 21.10.4, 21.10.7.c, and 21.10.9. The chair made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Scagliola. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Davis, Watson, Whitaker, Dalla, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 7-0. Number 2, there was a motion made to approve the parking spaces in Article 10 to 9/18. The motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Whitaker. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Davis, Watson, Whitaker, and Dalla all voted yes. Councilmembers Scagliola and Hayward voted no. Motion passed 5-2. Number 3, there was a
Which motion was that?
that was the motion to approve just the parking spaces 9/18.
I voted no.
I apologize. So then it was,
She said it was Scagliola and Hayward.
Yeah, it was 5-2. Scagliola and Davis disapproved
got it.
the 9/18.
Ms. Hayward did approve it. No, she didn't.
Yes,
That's
she
what I
did.
thought.
She approved this one. She didn't approve. No, she just approved. Yes. Hayward disapproved the 9/18.
4-3.
Four to-
Oh,
Yeah, 4-3.
But
It's the multifamily that was 5-2. I can't read my own notes.
Okay, we'll go back to part 2. The motion was made for Article 10 to approve the 9/18 parking spaces sizes. The motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Whitaker. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Watson, Whitaker, and Dalla all voted yes. Councilmembers Davis, and Hayward all voted yes. Councilmembers Davis and Scagliola voted no. The motion passed 5-2. Number 3, the motion was made to keep the 1.7 and the 5% variance. The motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Whitaker. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Davis, Councilmembers Davis and Scagliola all voted no. Councilmembers Watson, Whitaker, Dalla, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 4-3. The last motion was made to approve the rest of the parking article. The motion was made by Councilmember Whitaker, seconded by Councilmember Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, Davis, Watson, Whitaker, Dalla, Scagliola, and Hayward all voted yes. Motion passed 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you for unconfusing me here. All right. We'll move on to item number 11, monthly updates on major projects in progress and capital improvement projects. Item number 12, our monthly update on fiscal year 2022 and 2023 approved expansion progress programs. Information packets were provided to council and available for public viewing at our website, Schertz.com, so there is no vote needed for that one. So we'll move on to requests and announcements. Any further announcements from our city manager, Mr. Williams?
No further announcements, Mayor.
Okay. Council, any possible updates or information requested from staff?
Mayor, I noticed that the employee remembrance was scheduled for the 4th of,
I'm out of,
and anyway, I forget when it was, but, you know, I'm wondering, we used to do the remembrance down at the Public Works, and we have the memorial down there even. Why have we shifted venues to put it in the Civic Center? Just wondering about tradition.
I think it was just,
Go ahead. I think it was based on weather conditions. The majority of the time it was hot. We can't account for the weather that day. I mean, we can certainly plan for both, if that's what you like to do. We can plan the alternative to have it here inside the Civic Center based on weather conditions. But most of the time, it had been very, very hot days during that time. So,
Just wondering.
well, we can.
Never mind.
No, I think let's see if we can account for both. Let's see if we can continue the tradition and have the alternative site here at the Civic Center. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, council, any possible items you'd like to place on a future agenda? Okay. All right, announcements by our council members. Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
I attended the Kick Cancer 5K. Guys did an awesome job. 632 or so participants. That's really impressive. So, thank you.
Councilmember Davis?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Councilmember Watson?
Nothing.
Councilmember Whitaker?
I also attended the Kick Cancer 5K this weekend and kicked cancer a little bit.
Councilmember Dalla?
Attended the CVLGC board meeting, and then I also attended the Kick Cancer Relay. And I do just have to mention that in spite of Maverick having to stop and take a poop break, that I still beat Brian James.
Councilmember Scagliola?
There's no way I could beat that one. Nothing tonight, sir.
Councilmember Hayward?
Did you call me?
Yes, any announcements?
I can barely hear. I attended the PML San Antonio, and that's where I got my CMO pin, and I also got a Presidential Excellence Award for having 118 CEU credits. Currently sitting in Orlando, Florida at the AGRIP conference, which is the Association of Governmental Risk Pools, and I'm getting a fire hose moment, all the information about risk pools.
Well, I'd like to pass on my congratulations for getting your CMO. Definitely, you have gotten it four times in a row, am I correct? Your CMO, you have four in a row?
I have 4, yes, sir.
Yes, congratulations on that. And regarding the medal, was it you or Maverick? Because in that age group doesn't count. But then, yeah, Maverick is how old?
Well, he's 4 years old, so I guess that puts him in the 28-year-old age bracket in dog years.
I have no further announcements. The time is now 9:17. We stand adjourned.